Chapter 334. Fong Bujue, Level 29. Please select the game mode that you wish to join. You have selected Single-Player Survival Mode, Nightmare. Please confirm. Confirmed. Generating scenario, downloading. Please wait a moment. Welcome to Thriller Paradise. This time, the voice that read the script sounded very familiar. It was like the low male voice that appeared in the trailers of Western blockbusters. Download complete. You are currently playing Single-Player Survival Mode, Nightmare. A scenario introduction is provided in this mode, and there is a chance to trigger hidden side quests and special world building. Reward for clearing the scenario. When the reward is calculated, you will gain 80% extra EXP from clearing the scenario. Playing the scenario introduction soon. The game will start immediately after that. Oh, this reward is quite good, Fong Bujue said after seeing the hint. Even though the time required for single-player survival mode will be shorter, this is Nightmare mode, so the reward will not be bad. 80% extra EXP is basically double the reward. Actually, there was nothing to be excited about. For those players who used the double EXP booster card, every scenario would give them 100% extra EXP. Then, the introductory cinematic started to play. The image that appeared before Fong Bujue's eyes was something that looked like a paper-cut animation. It looked very childish and cartoony. But when Fong Bujue saw the first scene, his expression shifted and he gasped. No way, in the image there was a blue sky, white clouds, and the sun was shining. There was a dark green mountain range in the distance, and the peak of the mountain was covered in white snow. The camera panned down, and there were many quadrangular houses of different colors. A flat gray road ran through the front of those houses. This is a small town in Colorado, United States. No, 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 no. Fong Bujue repeated himself like he was trying to hypnotize himself. Impossible. This is impossible. This is a quiet, small, useless, rural, remote, nameless, childish, shabby, farm-minded, hillbilly, right-wing, flat-headed, truck-driving, outdated, old-fashioned, inbred, messy, outdated, remote, poor, bunkered, a small mountain village. This is, at this point, in the close-up of the cinematic, a wooden sign appeared on the snowy ground. The words South Park were written on it. South Park. Ah! Fong Bujue screamed. 1 second later, he screamed again. Ah! He did not know why he did this. According to the accurate data from the United States Department of Homeland Security, the world is experiencing a serious economic and ecological crisis. The reason for this is the Peruvian flute band. They are spread to be a Peruvian flute band. In certain areas, on average, there are 65 Peruvian flute bands. And all of this will be stopped this morning. At this point, the scenario started. At that moment, Fong Bujue had morphed into the style of the scenario, a flat paper cut style. He was standing on a snowy mountain near South Park. Underneath his feet was a thick layer of snow, and around him were several sparse trees. The sun was shining brightly above him, and his field of vision was wide. He could see the small town at the foot of the mountain, and there was nothing special about it. The strange thing was, even though he was surrounded by snow, he did not feel cold. Physically speaking, the temperature was about 20 degrees, and the humidity was just right. It was a very comfortable situation. Am I going to die? Fong Bujue was breaking out in cold sweat. He had not seen him so nervous in any of the scenarios before. Flute band. Flute band. He quickly searched through his memory for anything related to South Park. I've got it. The 10th to 11th episode of the 12th season, Pandemic. Fong Bujue had a general idea of the plot already, and almost at the same time, the system announcement came. Okay. Main quest triggered. Survive the attack of Jimbo and Ned. Jimbo and Ned. Fong Bujue's face was twitching, and he immediately looked around cautiously. Don't tell me those two are hunting. Just as he mumbled that to himself, he heard a loud shout coming from afar. "It's coming at us!" As soon as the roar was heard, the sound of submachine gun fire followed closely behind. Feng Bujue did not even need to think to know that the bullets were aimed at him. He hugged his head and ran away from the sound. In reality, his reaction was already too slow. If he ran after hearing the gunshot, he would not be able to outrun the bullet. Thankfully, Feng Bujue had Artemis's embrace and echo armor, so even though he was hit by more than 10 bullets in 2 seconds, he did not lose any life points. Feng Bujue used 5 seconds to hide behind a large rock, temporarily entering the enemy's blind spot. But just as he took half a breath, he heard Jimbo yelling at Ned from afar, "Ned! It's hiding behind the rock. Drop the bomb." When Ned replied, he sounded like a robot. Ned's throat cancer was caused by excessive smoking, and he had lost his right arm in the war, so he needed a speaker to hold against his throat to speak. He used his magnetic, electronic voice and always a flat tone to reply, "Understood." Feng Bujue had no choice but to move away from his original position. As he ran, he shouted, "I am a human! A human!" However, his voice was drowned out by the sound of machine gun fire and the subsequent explosion. This is not going to work. Feng Bujue soon realized the severity of the situation. His life points were already at 90% due to the alchemy amplification device. Even with the protection of powerful equipment, it was impossible for him to remain unscathed after being repeatedly shot by automatic rifles. Furthermore, Jimbo and Ned's firepower was at the level of an arms dealer. Who knew what they would come up with? Feng Bujue did not want to waste too much time on them. Instead of rushing to them to prove that he was a human being, he decided to run. Once he entered the town, these two hunting maniacs would not dare to do anything rash. With that in mind, Chungu activated body enhancement spell. He morphed into a shadow, circled around the enemy's firepower, and raced down the mountain. At the beginning of the scenario, Feng Bujue did not even have the chance to experiment with the summoning skill before he was forced to run for his life. He knew very well that in the world of South Park, there was no place and no character that was safe. No one's intelligence, logic, and morals could be trusted. The place looked peaceful, but for an outsider like him, it was more dangerous than hell. Chapter 335. Feng Bujue raced down the hill. After running for about 1 minute, he could no longer hear the gunshots behind him, so he deactivated body enhancement spell. By then, he had 62% of his life points left, so he was relatively safe. South Park was a typical rural American town. There were no skyscrapers, no traffic jams, and no horrible air quality. However, even though it was small, it had everything. The town had everything. There was a church, a government building, a post office, a school, a shopping center, and so on. Once Feng Bujue entered the town, the system announcement came. Current quest completed. Main quest updated. When the previous quest was ticked off, a new quest appeared. Search the town and be prepared before the start of the catastrophe. Preparation? Feng Bujue scoffed. To be honest, he really did not know how to prepare because the content of the catastrophe was too hard to describe. I guess I should go get some heavy weapons first. Feng Bujue thought about it and decided to rob a gun shop. There was only one gun shop in South Park, and it was owned by Jimbo and Ned. These two were good friends who had participated in the Vietnam War together. They were both single, and they ran the gun shop together. The two would often go hunting in the mountains. They had even done a TV show about hunting. I know you are thinking, hey, they must have gone through a period of picking up soap when they were in the military. But that should not be the case. Feng Bujue used a very normal and polite tone to ask for directions from a passerby, and the person told him the location of the gun shop. 5 minutes later, Feng Bujue arrived at the shop that faced the street. It was a one-story building. The outer wall was made of brown brick, and the roof was slightly wider than the outer wall. There were no windows on the front of the building. In the middle of the building was a double sliding glass door with a metal frame and frosted glass. Each door had the words Jimbo Guns written in white paint. Above the door was a large signboard with yellow lettering on a black background. The same words were written on the signboard. On the left side of the door, there was an advertisement board. It was also black with yellow words. Under the words Jimbo Gun Shop, there were the words buy, sell, transact, and consignment. On the right side of the door, there was a wooden ammunition canister and a large wooden carriage wheel. They were probably decorations. When Fong Bujue came to the door, the sign behind the glass door said closed. After Brother Ju tested the door to confirm that it was locked, he took out the wrench to break the glass and reached his hand into the door to open the lock. The reason he dared to do this was simple. He knew that Jimbo and Ned weren't in the store at the moment. If he didn't know this, he wouldn't have dared to barge in. Forcing his way in didn't trigger any alarms, and that was within Fong Bujue's expectations. You'll find out soon enough. Brother Ju pushed the door open and walked in. Inside the gun shop, on the walls to the left and right of the front door, there was a rabbit head and a rabbit tail. They were the kind that had not even been washed clean of blood. Under the rabbit head was a yellow warning sign. On the sign was the picture of a black pistol. In red it said, "Ammunition isn't cheap, so we don't fire warning shots." Under the rabbit tail was a white warning sign. On it was a yellow circular smiley face. In black it said, "Please remove your gun. Please remove your ski cap. Thank you." If the hint from these two signs was not obvious enough, then let's continue to look. There were many cabinets placed neatly around the place. They were filled with various models of firearms. Rifles were the majority. Other than that, there were some ski jackets that were commonly used for hunting in the mountains. Fong Bujue did not stand on ceremony. He casually grabbed a blue and green jacket from the wall and put it on. Walking up to the counter, Chen Xiaoyan saw that there were 3 layers of pistols in the waist-high glass cabinet. On the shelf behind the counter, in addition to a box of ammunition, there was a row of display firearms from top to bottom. They were the G3 automatic rifle, no attachments, the SPAS 12 shotgun, no attachments, the M40A3 sniper rifle, the M733 commando submachine gun, grenade attachment, and the classic Colt M1873 revolver. The position and height of the row of guns was right behind the cash register. In other words, they were within easy reach of the salesperson, Jimbo. He could grab one just by turning around. Next to the row of guns, on the most eye-catching part of the wall, there were 2 warning signs. On the top of the sign was a white one. In black and red it said, "Intruders will be killed on the spot. If they are not killed, we will make up for it." Below the sign was a black one. There was a logo of a white pistol. In white and red it said, "We are protected by the Second Amendment of the Constitution." Chen Xiaoyan turned to look to the right of the counter. There was a square window there. On the wall next to the window, there was a dead, headless snake. Its body was still bleeding. On another round plate there was a pair of severed rabbit ears. Below the ears was a warning sign. This one was orange, and the words were black and red. "Criminals. Can you run at 850 feet per second? If you can't, then you'd better have a bulletproof head." Chen Xiaoyan turned to the left of the counter. There was a map of the United States hanging on the wall. However, the map was not marked with place names. Instead, it was marked with a green pen. It marked out the places where the no retreat in the United States law was used. There were a total of 4 states that encouraged civilians to open fire. There were also 9 states that did not recommend shooting to kill. These 9 places were marked with a red cross. Next to the map was a side door. There was a sign hanging on the door that said, "Only for Ned." There were 2 slogans pasted on the side of the sign. "We don't bother calling the police," and "Be careful of the owner." Fong Bujue felt like he was sitting on pins and needles when he was stealing from the gun shop. Every 5 seconds, He had to raise his head to look at the various entrances to prevent the two-gun maniacs from returning to the shop and going on a killing spree. Thankfully, that did not happen. Even though the characters in South Park could do some crazy things like eating with their buttocks and excreting with their mouths, most of the time, their combat ability was no different from that of a normal human being. Therefore, Jimbo and Ned would not have been able to return to the gun shop in such a short amount of time. 5 minutes later, Fong Bujue had already stuffed several heavy weapons into his backpack. He also stuffed pistols and a bunch of ammo into his clothes. Then, he quickly left the place to prevent more trouble. Since he did not get the additional 40% EXP from the previous scenario, when he saw the 80% EXP from this scenario, Fong Bujue was quite tempted. He tossed the thought of using the summoning skill once, and then dying to the back of his mind, and started to focus on clearing the scenario. At that moment, Fong Bujue did not have the time to summon Musashi or study the power of this summoned creature. This was because once the catastrophe arrived, the threat of death would be everywhere, and it would follow him like a shadow. Brother Ju was such a person. If there was no difficulty, he would do it, but if there was one, he would do it. He would grumble about the game's inhumane difficulty while enjoying himself. That was his usual style. His next stop was the hospital. After obtaining sufficient weapons and ammunition, the second type of material that needed to be obtained was definitely medical supplies. Even for a rich player who did not lack money, they would not leave the resources in the scenario untouched, much less Fong Bujue. Before leaving Jimbo's gun shop, Fong Bujue randomly pulled out a map of the small town from a shelf near the door. After confirming the address of the hospital, he set off. To prevent unnecessary trouble, he did not consider stealing a car or taking a taxi. After all, there were very few taxis in South Park. He walked the whole way. After all, the town was not that big, and he would reach his destination after walking for a while. The large guns were hidden inside his backpack. From the outside, Fong Bujue did not look that suspicious. The streets of the small town were relatively empty, and running down the street would be too obvious, so Fong Bujue walked quickly. After walking for a while, his eyes caught something out of the corner of his eyes. This was an electrical appliance store. Outside the street, there were many televisions in the display window facing the street. At this moment, the televisions were broadcasting major news. In the news, a large group of fully armed American soldiers rushed out of military helicopters and armored vehicles to arrest the Peruvian flute bands in various places. What was even more hilarious was that after the people were taken away, the boxes, instruments, CDs, and so on left by the band on the street were actually recovered by a group of soldiers wearing full sets of isolation protective suits with metal clip. It was as if the items that the Peruvian flute bands came into contact with were infected with a biochemical virus. Fong Bujue leaned closer to the window to listen, and he could hear the voice on the screen. The government's operation to solve the crisis of the Peruvian flute bands has entered its third day. The Peruvian flute bands in all the major cities around the world have been evacuated and quarantined, but there are still some that have escaped. The Department of Homeland Security requests. When the news anchor said these words, the screen was interspersed with several sets of arrest images. When he said the word request, the screen showed subtitles. If you see the Peruvian flute band, do not approach them. Note down their location and report to the authorities. Under no circumstances, do not buy their CDs. The Peruvian flute bands have been apprehended and are being escorted to the quarantine zone in Miami. Seeing this, Fong Bujue moved away from the window. He mumbled, "It is already the afternoon of the third day. The disaster will break out around the world before sunset. I have to hurry." 10 minutes later, he followed the main road of the small town and arrived at the only hospital in South Park, Hell Passage Hospital. No matter how many times I see the name of this hospital, I still feel like complaining, Fong Bujue said with his head up at the entrance of the hospital before he walked in. Chapter 336. Miami, Peruvian Flute Band Shelter. The quarantine zone was surrounded by barbed wire, and at regular intervals, one could see warning signs with the logo of Homeland Security embedded in the barbed wire. Inside the camp, many blue and green military tents had been set up, and many members of the Peruvian Flute Band were pacing around the camp. Most of them were brown, and 80% of them spoke Spanish. They wore loose woven jackets or short jackets, and most of them wore hats. Overall, they looked a bit like a Mexican outfit, but it was not quite the same. On top of some of the temporarily built orange watchtowers, there was a soldier armed with a machine gun, ready to deal with any emergency. Many brown military trucks moved in and out of the camp, and batches of members of the Peruvian Flute Band were escorted out from the trucks. Among these people, there were 5 white boys who were in the 4th grade of primary school. 4 of them were the main characters of South Park: Stan, Kyle, Kenny, and Cartman. It should be noted that Stan, Kyle, and Kenny were all given names, but only Cartman was given a surname. His full name was Eric Cartman, but other than his mother and some of the teachers at school, no one would call him Eric because he was an extremely disgusting person, and no one was willing to call him by his last name. Here, a brief introduction of these few characters was made. First, there was Stan. In South Park, he was one of the more normal characters, relatively speaking. He had a girlfriend named Wendy, and they were on and off multiple times. A few seasons ago, he had a strange illness where he would vomit whenever he saw a girl he liked, but that was no longer the case. He had a violent older sister named Shelley who had braces. She was a good fighter, and when she was angry she could throw a piano. Stan's father was the king of South Park, Randy. By the way, Jimbo was Stan's uncle. Next was Kyle, a Jewish boy. His distinguishing feature was the green beret on his head. He was kind and honest, and he was good with computers. His father was a lawyer, and his mother was someone who liked to turn the smallest thing into a big deal. She was very protective of her children. There was also a younger brother, Ike, who was in kindergarten. He was an adopted child from Canada. The third person was Kenny. He was wearing an orange hoodie, and only the middle of his face was exposed. His speech was unclear. In the setting, his family was very poor, and he would die in every episode in the early stages of the series. The way he died was usually the kind of inexplicable and tragic death in Final Destination. His hidden identity was Mr. Mystery, and he often played the role of a hero to save the world. However, Kenny also had a lustful side. His knowledge of sex was obviously better than his peers. In one episode, he actually died of syphilis. Finally, there was Cartman. From Papercut's drawing style, his appearance was different from his 3 companions because he was very fat, but he never admitted it. He always said, "I'm not fat. It's just that I have a big bone structure." Cartman was the most despicable person in the world of South Park, bar none. His character was vile, greedy, cunning, and somewhat ignorant. Moreover, he had extreme racist thoughts. His thinking was completely self-centered, and he couldn't understand what guilt was. Sometimes Cartman was extremely stupid, but sometimes he was like a genius. He was well-informed, knowledgeable, resourceful, aggressive, and fluent in many languages. He often played the role of the leader in some major event. He had many extremely twisted and biased opinions, such as, "Every Jew has a bag of gold coins around their neck," "Humans can eat with their buttocks," and "Hippies must die." And in the world of South Park, his opinions were proven to be true time and time again. Those were the 4 main characters in South Park. The 5th child who was caught with them was Craig, a classmate of the 4 protagonists. Craig was usually dressed in blue, and he spoke with a heavy nasal accent. He was a frequent visitor to the school's office, and he could often be seen sitting in the corridor outside the office, waiting to be punished. His classic catchphrase was, "If I can say XX in front of XX, an adult, how happy would I be?" Other than his ability to mock, Craig and his family had the habit of giving people the middle finger. That was probably one of the reasons he was often detained at the school. So, why would these 5 white children be brought to the orphanage? There were 2 reasons. First, to make money from selling CDs, they disguised themselves as a Peruvian flute band and played London Bridge Falls on the street with their musical instrument. Second, the intelligence of the other characters in the scenario had once again gone offline. Therefore, the military could not tell that the 5 white children were not real Peruvians. "I'm sorry, sir." Stan and his friends walked down from the truck and pushed through the crowd to reach a guard tower. "Sir, there must be a misunderstanding. Can I talk to you?" Kyle added, "Sir, can we talk to you for a while?" The soldier on the sentry post, who was wearing the anti-terrorist uniform, looked at them and replied rudely, "Go back. I'm not buying your lousy CDs." Stan replied, "No, sir, there is a big misunderstanding here. We are actually not Peruvians." The soldier cut him off loudly, "I told you! I'm not buying your lousy CDs today." He was clearly agitated. "Do you understand me? I can't stand it anymore." At that moment, a real member of the Peruvian flute band walked to the side of the children and asked the soldier in Spanish, "Sir, do you want to buy a CD?" The next second, the soldier shot him dead. The 5 children looked at the dead body that was inches away from them with shock. Their mouths were half open and they were speechless. Inside the hospital, Fong Bujue's operation went smoothly. He did not ask for any help. He only looked at the hospital's sign and found the storage room on his own. During that period, he shamelessly stole a large backpack from a patient's sick room. He planned to use it to stock up on supplies. Bandages, disinfectant, syringes. He rummaged through the backpack, but he could not find any medicine. The blood bags inside the freezer were useless to him. "Do I need to go to the pharmacy?" Fong Bujue mumbled. He had passed by the pharmacy earlier, and opposite the door, there was a security guard reading the newspaper. The door that led to the pharmacy was a very thick metal door. Obviously, the hospital still attached great importance to the place where morphine was stored. Breaking down that door shouldn't be a problem, but there are too many people in the corridor. Even though it is not a big deal to kill people here, what if we alert the crazy people at South Park? Fong Bujue thought about that and a plan formed in his mind. He planned to use a trap that matched the intelligence of the characters in this world to lure them away. Chapter 337. The plan to sneak into the pharmacy was a success, and what Fong Bujue did was run to the corridor outside the pharmacy and yell excitedly, "Hey! Guys, there's a Batmobile parked outside the hospital." Then all who heard this poured out in high spirits. The most ridiculous thing was that the few workers inside the pharmacy also rushed out and did not even close the door before they left. Even Fong Bujue thought that this method was a pain in the ass. After all, Cartman had used this method of sending people away by claiming, "There's a Batmobile outside," many times in S1607, and it had worked every single time. However, it had to be said that it was very effective. After sneaking into the pharmacy to search, Fong Bujue was rather disappointed because most of the drugs there were useless. They were the kind that did not have a description. There were many other drugs, and even though they had different packaging, the description was the same. Name, antibiotic 3030, item type, consumable quality, normal function, dispel the effects of poison and infection. Can be taken out of the scenario, yes remark. This is a common anti-inflammatory drug. It can be taken orally. These drugs were all bottled, and their effect was to dispel abnormal status. They did not look like they were that valuable. The thing that Fong Bujue wanted the most was morphine. He could see the item description, but the effect was different from what he expected. Name, morphine *5 item type, consumable quality, normal function, reduces the increase of terror points by 30% for a certain period of time. Can be taken out of the scenario, yes remark. Too many injections within a short period of time might cause a toxic reaction. Feng Bujue was not unfamiliar with this kind of psychotropic drug. When he was hospitalized, he had used many drugs that could only be found in mental hospitals. In fact, he had tried many of the latest drugs from overseas, so morphine was nothing new to him. Perhaps the game was too sensitive to this kind of opiate, and it was afraid that the teenagers would not be able to resist it if they used it too much, so it changed the name of the drug. Feng Bujue even specially went to search for Vicodin, and in the end, he found it. However, the medicine didn't even have a description. It was treated as a useless item by the system. Feng Bujue wanted to give it a try. He opened the bottle cap and gulped down more than a dozen pills like eating mint candy. As expected, I don't feel anything. As he walked out of the pharmacy, he mumbled to himself. I didn't find any medicine that can recover my life points or stamina points. Looks like I'll have to go get some food. Eating should help me recover some life points. After looting everything he wanted, Feng Bujue left the hospital and went to the shopping center. In any case, other than firearms and medical supplies, everything else could be obtained there. Let's look at the Peruvian flute band shelter. The temporary headquarters of the Department of Homeland Security was only separated from the quarantine area by a barbed wire fence. From here, the trapped Peruvians could be seen. At this moment, the front of the headquarters was crowded with people. Among them were staff in casual clothes, fully armed soldiers, and officials in suits and leather shoes. The person in charge was a man who looked to be in his 50s. The man had half a head of gray hair. The front half of his head was already bald. He wore a black suit with a red tie. He was not only the highest commanding officer there, he was also the initiator of the entire manhunt. Sir, good news. 2 soldiers walked up to him and said, "Looks like we've succeeded, sir. There are reports from all the major cities about the Peruvian flute band. They have been completely wiped out." Hearing that, the people around him erupted in cheers. "That's great news. We did it. Thank God." Who knew why this group of people was congratulating each other? "All right, everyone, please calm down," the balding officer said. "We still have a lot of work to do." With a serious face he said, "We still need to take down their base to prevent them from coming back," a worker holding a report next to him said, "but we have no idea where they came from, sir." He lowered his head to look at the report in his hand. "We've checked, but we couldn't find anything." The balding officer's expression seemed to say, F***CK. He raised his hands to hug his head and then raised them high. "Use your brain, idiot. Where else could the Peruvian flute band come from?" However, the people around him were still not that smart. They all rubbed their chins and pretended to be deep in thought. The balding officer was shocked. He roared, "The country's name is in the band's name." A worker in a white shirt and black tie interjected, "No, sir, we've checked the entire world map. There is no country called Peruvian." "It's not Peruvian, idiot. It's Peru." The balding officer walked to a map and pointed at it. "It's here." This was a mistake made by the workers at the Department of Homeland Security. It was similar to mistaking China for China, so they couldn't find Peru on the map. The few staff members repeated like babies learning to speak, "Oh, Peru." It was as if this was the first time they had heard this word in their lives. The balding officer did not want to argue about this anymore, so he said directly, "Now, we need to wipe out this country in one fell swoop." The people around him looked at each other, and one of them asked, "Is that really necessary, sir?" A soldier said, "Isn't that a bit extreme?" Another soldier added, "That's right." The balding officer roared at the top of his lungs, "We have to wipe them out completely, or else they will never stop harassing us." Right then, a black officer in a general's uniform ran over and said, "Sir, you'd better come and take a look. We've captured a Peruvian flute band that was trying to escape." The balding officer grabbed the collar of the person next to him and said, "Did you see that? Damn it." 2 minutes later, inside the interrogation room, before a long metal table, there were 5 stools, and sitting on the stools were 5 primary school children. The balding officer stood across from the table, holding a CD in his hand. He looked at the cover and read, "Produced by the Grass Mud Brothers, Moon Snacks." This was a CD that the children had created to make money by pretending to be a band. "You've misunderstood, sir," Stan explained. "We are not the real Peruvian flute band." The balding officer's intelligence seemed to have gone offline. He looked at the 5 children and said in a sarcastic tone, "Yes, yes. You are just playing Peruvian flute band at the commercial center to sell your Grass Mud Brothers CD, and you are not the real Peruvian flute band, right?" Stan opened his arms innocently. "We are still children. You see, we just want to earn some extra money." Kyle added, "We just want to go home." Kenny begged in a muffled voice, "Sir, please, I'm begging you. I was supposed to go to Mexico on Saturday." The children all said, "We were born and raised in Colorado. We are Caucasians." With a serious expression, the balding officer whispered to the officer next to him, "Let's go out for a chat." The 2 of them and a few other workers walked out of the interrogation room and started another round of analysis based on 0 IQ. The conclusion was, the 5 people in the room are hybrids of Peruvian flute band and human beings. We are going to use them to destroy Peru. At the same time, outside the barbed wire fence at the quarantine zone, a soldier asked the worker next to him, "Thompson, can you come over here for a moment?" The worker by the name of Thompson was a Spanish translator. After he walked over, the soldier continued, "The Peruvian flute band refused to shut up. They kept repeating something, but I could not understand it. Please, we cannot leave." At that moment, an old Peruvian flute band member yelled at them in Spanish through the fence, "We are here to protect you." The person next to him added, "Yes, we cannot leave. We have to protect you." Hearing that, Thompson translated with some skepticism. They seemed to be saying, "You cannot send us away, we are your guardians." The soldier asked, "Guardians of what?" The old Peruvian man in the barbed wire replied, "Hairy Death, the furry god of death." He repeated it twice in agitation. The soldier did not understand, but he still asked the translator, "Thompson, what is he saying?" Thompson's face darkened and he replied, "I think he is saying, the furry god of death?" South Park Shopping Center. The sun was setting faster than expected. Dusk was coming, and the sky was dyed with the color of dusk. When Brother Jew arrived at the parking lot in front of the shopping center, he saw a reporter with a microphone and a cameraman with a camera in the plaza. Not far from them was a CNN news van. The reporter should be doing a live news report. Fong Bujua wanted to hear what he had to say, so he took a few steps closer. As you can see, these plazas are much quieter now. We have not seen a Peruvian flute band for a few days now. The residents obviously enjoy the peace and quiet. Thanks to the Department of Homeland Security, the people of the world can now breathe a sigh of relief from the flute band plague. Woo! Before the reporter could finish, he was interrupted by a loud noise. A sound that sounded like a monster's groan came from 2 streets away, and at the same time, there was the sound of something huge stomping on the ground. Suddenly, there was an explosion in the distance, and flames rose into the sky. The cameraman immediately moved the camera over and captured the smoke and fire of the explosion. The fleeing crowd rushed over, and the screams came one after another. "Oh my God! Oh my God!" In the shaky camera, a police car with sirens blaring could be seen flying into the air from that direction. It drew an arc in the air and landed in the middle of the plaza, about 5 meters behind the reporter. The reporter was so scared that he dropped his microphone. He ran to the camera and shouted into it with a face full of panic, "Something has happened here. It's not the Peruvian flute band, but—" His words were cut off, and his face was filled with shock. Obviously, he had seen something that was not on camera. "Oh my God! What the hell is that?" The anchor who was connected to him at the TV station shouted into his earpiece, "Paul? Paul, what did you see?" "It's furry, it's furry." After Paul shouted a few words, the connection was cut off, and the image disappeared. It did not matter whether Paul and the cameraman were still alive or not. In any case, Brother Jew had already disappeared 10 seconds ago. He did not have the time to save people or maintain order. He knew that there was more than one monster. At that moment, the whole world was under attack, and there was nothing he could do alone. Moreover, the moment the low roar rang out, the system notification had already announced, "Current quest has been changed. Main quest updated. Survive until the end of the catastrophe." After seeing this quest, Fong Bujua ran into the shopping mall without hesitation, but once he stepped through the door, another announcement entered his ears. Side quest triggered. Bring Stan's parents and sisters safely to the shopping mall. Motherf *Ker, I was already at the entrance of the shopping mall before I called for the side quest. Fong Bujua cursed. This quest even came with a very specific real-time reminder. In Brother Jew's game menu, an interface that looked like a radar instantly appeared. It marked out the location of Stan's family members. It was as if the system was luring him to complete the quest. If this was a normal difficulty, this side quest would have popped up when Fong Bujua first entered the small town. Then he could have lured Stan's family to the shopping mall before the catastrophe happened. He could have either tricked them or kidnapped them. But in nightmare difficulty, when the quest popped up, it was already a chaotic situation. Fong Bujua could only choose not to go, or if he did, he would have to take a great risk. After about 10 seconds of hesitation, Fong Bujua growled angrily, "I will kill you!" He gritted his teeth and stomped his feet. He slung the travel backpack with the medical supplies over his shoulders and took out an M733 Commando with a grenade attached. Then he started to run toward the location indicated by the radar. At this time, running down the street with the weapon was no longer a problem. There were people running in panic everywhere. The police and military were too tired to deal with the monsters, so no one cared about him. Fong Bujua ran for a while, and he suddenly noticed that his stamina points were dropping fast. He thought to himself, "This outfit sure is heavy. Looks like I need to get a car." He did not consider stopping the cars on the road like he did in GTA. Based on the current situation, it was more likely that the drivers would step on the gas pedal and run him over. Therefore, Fong Bujua ran down another street and found a parked car in an alley. He jogged over and made sure that there was no one in the car and that the door was locked. Then he used the butt of the gun to shatter the windshield. After he opened the door and got in, Fong Bujua skillfully punched open the control panel under the driver's seat. He quickly found the positive and negative wires from the pile of wires and started to connect them. 2 minutes later, he had reversed the car out of the alley. He changed gears and stepped on the gas pedal. By then, the sky had completely darkened. Many of the street lights had stopped working, and there were people running everywhere. It was extremely chaotic. Fong Bujua turned on the headlights and drove at high speed while ensuring his safety. After 10 minutes, the dot on the radar was getting closer and closer to him. He was just one more turn away. Unexpectedly, just as he turned the steering wheel, the shadow of a giant monster appeared in front of him. Fong Bujua immediately stepped on the brakes, but the car still slid toward the giant monster's body. All drivers would instinctively turn the steering wheel toward their side before an accident happened. But Fong Bujua would not be afraid. Even at this critical moment, he maintained his calmness and reacted rationally and efficiently. The car continued to move forward due to inertia, and it was about to hit the giant monster. Fong Bujua calmly unbuckled his seatbelt with one hand and stabilized the steering wheel with the other to keep the car moving forward. After he unbuckled his seatbelt, he reached for the backpack and rifle on the passenger seat. All these actions were completed in 2 seconds. Then, the front of the car slammed into the giant monster's furry body. Feng Bujue was prepared for this. He adjusted his posture and held the gun and backpack straps with one hand while the other was in front of his body to cushion the impact. With a loud crash, Feng Bujue's body smashed through the windshield and flew toward the giant monster's soft body. After the impact was neutralized, he rolled onto the hood of the car. Then, he quickly flipped over and sat up on his back. The whole process was done in one go. Then, he swung his arm and put the backpack straps on his left shoulder. He held the gun in his right hand and kicked off the ground. Before the monster could do anything, he had already jumped 7 to 8 meters away. At this point, Brother Ju did not dare look back. He rushed forward to increase the distance between him and the monster. It was not that Feng Bujue did not want to use his naked eyes to confirm the monster's appearance, but he already knew what these monsters looked like. When he recalled the 2 episodes of the Peruvian flute band, the first thing that came to his mind was the appearance of these giant monsters. The appearance of these giant monsters was easy to describe. They were a group of giant guinea pigs. They were no different from domestic guinea pigs in terms of appearance. The only difference was that they were 5 stories tall and had a certain degree of aggression. Some of them even wore cloth jackets and dressed up as bees, rabbits, and so on. As for where these giant Mo creatures came from, and whether they were intelligent or not, no one knew. In any case, they just appeared out of nowhere and acted out Attack of the Guinea Pigs, all over the world, eating people and tearing down houses everywhere. What should I do? Should I go around it? Feng Bujue ran as he observed the terrain and the radar in the menu. He wanted to find a suitable route. But at that moment there was another change. Suddenly, a whistling sound came from the sky. When he looked up, he saw 3 F-15s cutting through the sky and firing several missiles at this place. Chapter 338. 5 minutes earlier, at Stan's home, Sharon was on the phone. Stan's mother, Sharon, was on the phone with an anxious expression on her face. Please, I do not even know who to call for help. The police are unable to help at all. I think the children are really in deep trouble this time. The person on the other end of the phone said something. Sharon replied, Yes, okay, please call me after you confirm it. Thank you. Then she hung up. After putting down the phone, her face was still filled with worry. Sharon was one of the more normal characters in South Park, so when her son went missing, her reaction was the same as most other parents. But there was another person who was not normal in this house. That was Stan's father, the #1 scumbag in South Park. Randy usually wore a blue shirt, had black hair parted in the middle, and had a small mustache that was slightly wider than Chancellor's. The man's occupation was a geologist, but he was rarely seen at work. Most of the time, he was just trying to be a scumbag. At that moment, when his wife was worried about her son's disappearance, Randy was holding a portable camera and recording everything at home. In these 2 episodes of South Park, because Randy had just bought a new camera, he had been using it all day long to take pictures of everything. The content was extremely boring and repetitive. It included family members eating, taking a shower, watching television, going to the bathroom, and so on. While he was recording, he would add his own narration. Randy, I swear to God, if you don't put that thing down. Sharon roared at him angrily. She had had enough of her husband's antics for the past few days. But Randy replied with the same line that he had been repeating for the past few days. Sharon, one day you will be happy that I have recorded so many family stories. I'm not joking with you, Randy. That's enough. Sharon roared. Why do you have to record every minute and every second? Suddenly, a low growl came from outside the house. Sharon was interrupted, and her expression turned to one of shock and confusion. What the hell was that? Randy asked. But he did not stop filming. Instead, he went into the rhythm of The Clover Files, also known as The Clover Files. The movie was shot in a different way, from the perspective of the characters holding a portable camera. Oh my God, Sharon said in fear as she felt the footsteps that sounded like an earthquake. Something seems to have happened outside, Randy said. Stay inside the house and do not move. Then, he grabbed the camera and ran out of the house. When he ran to the door, Stan's violent older sister, Shelley, was coming down from the second floor. She stood at the top of the stairs and said, "What happened, Daddy?" "Go back to your room, Shelley," Randy said in a commanding tone. Then, Randy rushed out of the house. As soon as he opened the door, he saw people screaming and running away. There was also the sound of helicopter rotors in the sky. He looked up and saw two Chinooks, twin-rotor transport helicopters commonly seen in movies, hovering in the air. Randy saw a familiar face in the crowd. It was Stan's homeroom teacher, Mr. Garrison. He was bald, wore glasses, and wore a green shirt. The man had undergone 2 gender reassignment surgeries. During that time, he had been a heterosexual, a homosexual, a heterosexual, and a lesbian. Every time he changed his sexual orientation, he would join the group's gatherings and protests. But when it came to his own interests, he would immediately change his stance and attack and insult the other group. It was a classic case of one's ass determines one's brain. Randy went forward to pull him back and ask, "What happened?" Garrison replied in a panic, "They are everywhere." "What? What do you mean by they?" Randy pressed. "Furry things," Garrison shouted. "Really, super furry." After he shouted that, he shook off Randy's arm and followed the direction of the crowd to escape. "Ah!" A scream attracted Randy's attention. He turned around and saw a man in a yellow t-shirt and jeans flying toward him from afar. With a loud thud, he landed before him. The man's body was severely twisted from the fall. His left leg was bent forward like he had been on a tiger stool, and both of his arms were bent behind his back. The ribs on the left side of his torso were exposed, and the bones on his right wrist were poking out. Almost the moment he landed, the man stopped breathing. Blood flowed from his mouth and nose, and he died with his eyes wide open. "Who did this?" Randy screamed and cursed in shock. "Woo!" There was another groaning sound. Randy lifted his head to look. Behind the crowd that was running away, he saw a giant guinea pig. "What is that?" Randy gasped in shock. "Mr. Marsh, you have to leave this place as soon as possible. It is not safe here." Someone grabbed Randy's shoulder and yelled at him. The one who spoke was the town's police officer, Barbrady. Wearing sunglasses, slightly plump. He was found to be illiterate in a certain season and was suspended. For some reason, he was reinstated. He was quite responsible and even knew to remind others to leave quickly. Hearing that, Randy quickly ran to the other end of the street, but he saw a car fly out from the corner. The car rolled on the ground for a few rounds before it exploded into flames. Following closely behind it was another giant guinea pig. "Oh, God! God!" Randy saw the giant monster in front of him, but he did not run away immediately. Instead, he stopped and pointed the camera at his own face. Gasping for air, he said, "Ha! Ha! Ha! I'm stunned." Just as the man was doing something stupid, suddenly, a speeding car came out from behind the giant guinea pig and rammed into the monster's body. After the crash, a man in a dark blue ski jacket flew out from the driver's seat. Even though he was in such a violent car accident, he did not forget to grab a backpack and an assault rifle. In just 5 seconds, the man used his nimble movement to escape from the giant monster's side. At that moment, 3 F-15s flew across the sky, and several missiles with trails of white smoke whizzed through the air. The missiles all hit the giant guinea pig, but the shock wave from the explosion affected a radius of more than 10 meters. Randy was further away from the explosion, so he was only knocked to the ground. But Fong Bujue was not so lucky. His whole body was blasted away, drawing a parabola in the air before he slammed into a broken car by the side of the road. The car had probably been flung away or stomped on by the giant monster because the car's shell was already deformed. When Feng Bujue fell, his waist was cut by a piece of metal that came out of nowhere. The wound was about the length of a finger, and it was bleeding profusely. In a situation like this where he fell, even armor would not be able to save him. Fortunately, he had the jacket that he had stolen from the gun shop, so at least it mitigated some of the damage. Motherf *****. Feng Bujue cursed as he crawled out from the car. His face was also scratched by the broken glass. There was a gash on his left cheek, but the wound was considered shallow. It did not cause too much loss of life points, and it did not cause him to bleed. Woo! Before the dust from the explosion could settle, the giant guinea pig's squealing started again. Based on Feng Bujue's memory, these monsters were very powerful. Conventional weapons were useless against them. Even a tank would be flipped over if they tried. Bullets, cannons, and missiles, none of them could harm them. They could only suppress them. As a human being with flesh and blood, getting close to these giant guinea pigs was no different from having a death wish. With such a huge difference in size, if a human got too close, whether they were scratched, bitten, stomped on, or scratched, they would definitely die. I'll be there after taking a turn. How can I be stopped here? Feng Bujue grumbled angrily. He used both of his shoulders to carry the backpack. With one hand pressed against the wound and the other holding the gun, he activated body enhancement spell and stomped on the ground. The next second there was the sound of concrete being torn apart. The ground under Feng Bujue's feet split open in a spiderweb shape with a radius of 5 meters. And the person in the middle of this spiderweb leaped into the air like a bullet. Using a 360-degree jump in the air, Feng Bujue successfully leaped onto the rooftop of a building that was 4 stories tall. Since he could not walk down the street, he decided to leap onto the rooftop and vault through the rooftop. To his surprise, once Brother Ju leaped across the rooftop, he saw Randy on the street in front of him. When the giant monsters were closing in on him, the idiot was still standing where he was, playing his first-person selfie. What the f***ck? This idiot. Naturally, Feng Bujue recognized Randy. The cursor on the radar showed that he was one of the targets of his side mission. Therefore, he had no choice but to save him. Quick, run! You King beep. Feng Bujue leaped down the street. In midair, he used the M733 commando to fire 2 grenades at the guinea pig. The moment the grenades hit the monster, before they exploded, Feng Bujue landed on the ground. He did not even have the time to do anything to cushion the impact. He took the brunt of the fall head-on, maintained his standing posture, and immediately leaped forward. Randy, whose face was filled with shock, saw a shadow drop from the sky like a superhero and jump at him. The man was covered in blood, and his expression was fierce. He did not turn around to look at the explosion. It looked like he was a real man. Ah! Feng Bujue roared out of nowhere. This roar contained too many complicated emotions. Of course, the main ones were anger and dissatisfaction. With a single arm, Brother Ju picked Randy up from the ground. He ignored his wound and gritted his teeth. He carried a middle-aged man over his shoulder and ran forward like he was flying. He yelled, "Where is your home?" Brother Ju asked loudly. What? Randy was still in shock. He asked blankly. Your home. Where is it? Feng Bujue repeated the words word by word. It's just over there. Randy pointed at a house about 10 meters away. 2 seconds later, he picked up the camera and pointed it at himself. Oh, God, a superhero has come to save me. He lifted his head slightly and told Feng Bujue, "Hey, buddy, what is your hero's name?" Beep. That was Feng Bujue's reply. Randy believed him. He looked at the camera and said, "His name is Beep. A real superhero, how cool is that?" If not for the requirement of the mission, Feng Bujue would have killed the man already, but at that moment, he had no choice but to hold it in. In less than half a minute, Feng Bujua reached Stan's house. The door was not closed, so Feng Bujua tossed Randy into the house with a flick of his wrist. He followed closely behind Randy into the house. When the door was closed, Brother Ju collapsed to the ground. In a few minutes, this series of actions had caused his life points to drop drastically. His life points had dropped to 13%. Once Feng Bujua entered the house, he took out disinfectant, bandages, and suturing needles and thread from his backpack. He prepared to deal with the wound on his waist. As a very efficient person, he did not stop talking. He used this time to communicate with the 3 NPCs before him. "Don't be afraid, I am here to help you." Sharon and Shelley showed fear and helplessness. Only Randy focused on the camera and pointed it at Feng Bujua. He explained, "Look, a superhero is sewing up his wound in my living room." Even though Feng Bujua wanted to punch Randy, he resisted the urge. This was because he knew that the camera that Randy was holding did not have a tape attached to it, and Brother Ju did not plan to remind him. He would just let the man continue with the camera. At the same time, Central America, Costa Rica's airspace. In the night sky, a C-130 cargo plane with the American flag and the logo of the Department of Defense was flying south. 5 primary school students sat in a row inside the cabin. No one spoke, and the atmosphere was quite strange. Suddenly, the door that led to the cockpit opened. The co-pilot walked in and told the children, "Okay, we are still about 800 kilometers away from Peru. After we land, there will be a truck that will bring you into the country. Then, they will give you a brief mission description." After saying that, he retreated back into the cockpit and closed the door. Several seconds later, Craig opened his lips to say with an expressionless face, "When you came up with that genius idea of disguising yourself as the Peruvian flute band to earn money, was there a brief moment where one of you said, 'Hey, you know, this plan might go awry?'" He paused for 2 seconds and then continued, "No, you did not think that because you are all assholes and will never learn from your mistakes. That is why the whole school despises you." Kyle replied, "That's not right. The children at the school love us." He looked at Stan and said, "Is that so?" Stan confirmed, "Of course, the children at the school love us to death." He turned to Craig and said, "But because we are in a bad situation now, Craig is being cocky." Craig still had a calm expression on his face as he mocked, "I am cocky. You guys took the money from my birthday red packet. The money for the children to form the Peruvian flute band came from Craig, and caused me to be arrested and sent to Miami. Now, we will not be able to go home until we destroy the whole country of Peru. So, I am the cocky one?" Cartman pointed at Craig and told his friends, "I have nothing to say to this kid." Craig ignored him and continued, "Do you know why no one at the school likes to hang out with the 4 of you?" He paused out of habit. "Because you guys are always doing this kind of thing. You always come up with these stupid ideas, and they always backfire on you. Then you are sent out of the country or thrown into outer space or something," he concluded. "That is why no one wants to hang out with you guys." Cartman replied nonchalantly, "You are too pessimistic, Craig. We will cross that bridge when we get there." At the same time, inside the conference hall of the United States Department of Homeland Security. The conference hall was empty. There was only one person standing silently at the front of the podium. It was the balding officer, and he was also the head of the Department of Homeland Security. In front of him was a world map. At that moment, he was looking at the map with his hands behind his back. There was a smug smile on his lips. "Sir, we have run into a bigger problem." The black officer in the general's uniform came in from the door with a document in his hand and said anxiously, "Oh." The head of the Department of Homeland Security sounded relaxed. "What kind of problem could there be?" Reports of major disasters have been sent in from all over the world. The culprit behind the huge casualties and losses seems to be. The black officer hesitated. The head of the Department of Homeland Security did not wait for him to finish speaking. He turned around and sneered. Guinea pigs? The black officer was stunned. Yes, sir. How did you know? You are so close to the truth, Davis. The head of the Department of Homeland Security laughed. I almost saw through it. Sir? Davis did not understand what the head of the Department of Homeland Security meant. I thought you knew the truth in Miami, but you just couldn't see through the clues, the head of the Department of Homeland Security said again. You knew this would happen? Davis stuttered. Oh, this is just the beginning, Davis. The head of the Department of Homeland Security raised his hand and waved a finger. And I will never let you ruin it. Before he finished speaking, the head of the Department of Homeland Security suddenly opened his mouth. His tongue shot out like a javelin. In a second, it stretched to a length of 4 to 5 meters. The tip of his tongue drilled into Davis's eye socket, passed through his eyeballs, and entered his brain. Davis did not have time to react. His whole body trembled for a few seconds before his brain was completely crushed. His body then fell to the ground powerlessly and became a stiff corpse. The head of the Department of Homeland Security retracted his tongue and said to the corpse in front of him calmly, I am sorry, my friend. I have racked my brains and worked hard to wait for this day. He paused. The flute band is heading towards extinction. The era of us guinea pigs has arrived. He bent over and picked up the file in Davis's hand. And the only person who can stop all of this has been sent to a nameless place. At this time, the first page of the file was a photo. And the person in the photo was actually Craig. Chapter 339. South Park stands home. Dealing with the wound took Fong Bujue quite some time. One of the reasons was because the cut on his waist was much bigger than he expected, and two of the reasons was that he could not remove his clothes. The ski jacket that he obtained from the scenario could be removed, but the purple suit could not. Therefore, he could only sew up the wound through the shirt, and that affected his efficiency. Of course, the most important reason was that he was not very good at this kind of mending. By then, Sharon and Shelley had calmed down a little, but Randy was still playing with the camera. Okay, now I will turn the camera back on. When Randy turned the camera on, he aimed it at his own face and started to explain. Okay, I am Randy Marsh. I am filming something. A group of giant monsters are attacking our small town. Currently, it is chaos outside the window. As he said that, he turned the camera around and aimed it at the window that faced the street. Through the window, they could see that the street was littered with broken dead bodies and overturned cars. Many underground gas pipes had exploded, and no one cared about the fires that they caused. And the living people, they were either screaming and running for their lives or lying in pools of blood, waiting for their blood to run dry. I almost did not make it back to the house alive. Thankfully, this superhero, Beep, saved me. Randy filmed Brother Bujue for a few seconds before he turned the camera back to his own face. Sharon is with me, and Shelley is with me. As he said that, he used the camera to film his wife and child. In this kind of dangerous moment, he maintained his shameless style and said, Shelley, quick, wave at the camera. Randy, can you put down that damn camera? Sharon demanded sternly at her husband. We need to figure out a way to save this. Randy replied shamelessly and confidently, I don't know what to do. I am so shocked. Why don't you put down the camera and go help the injured gentleman? Sharon came up with a rather reasonable suggestion. Don't worry, Mrs. Marsh, I can handle this alone. Fong Bujue quickly replied. He did not want the characters from South Park to perform any kind of treatment on him. In this world, forget about Randy, even if it was a proper medical staff, they would not have been able to save anyone. Instead, there were quite a number of cases where they had killed someone. In Fong Bujue's memory, there was once when Kenny was burned and sent to the hospital. After the doctor cut open his stomach, he took away his heart and replaced it with a baked potato. There was also a time when Cartman went to get his tonsils removed. After the surgery, he contracted AIDS. There were many similar examples. Many characters, led by Kenny, had died in Hell Road's hospital due to various diseases. In any case, asking the people from South Park to save him was more dangerous than asking them to kill him. Why don't you turn on the TV and watch the news? I'll be done soon. Fong Bujue quickly changed the topic. Sharon thought it made sense. She quickly stepped forward and turned on the TV in the living room. Randy's camera also focused on the television screen. Perhaps it was due to good luck, but even in such a serious disaster, the TV signal was not interrupted, and the TV station did not stop operating. Once the power was switched on, the live broadcast of the disaster appeared. This is a live report from New York. This place is also being attacked by giant guinea pigs, the narrator said. According to the report, the threat of a giant guinea pig invasion is currently sweeping through all the major cities around the world. Randy gasped, "Oh my God! There are these monsters all over the world?" The live broadcast of this news was shaky. The person who filmed this appeared to be riding on a helicopter. The video taken from above showed that the damage to the major cities was even more serious. The giant guinea pigs swarmed through the streets, and there were explosions and collapsed buildings everywhere. Some of the soldiers were forming a net to surround the monsters. They used their machine guns to unleash powerful firepower on the monsters, but the monsters did not seem to be affected at all. "Look at those monsters." Sharon pointed at the giant guinea pigs on the news. "Randy, what should we do?" Before Randy could say anything, there was another shocking change. There was a loud bang. The wall opposite from Fong Bujue was smashed open, and a giant guinea pig's head poked in. The cute creature's face was as tall as two grown men, and its nose was making this kind of low growl. At that moment, Fong Bujue finished treating the wound and stopped the bleeding. "Oh my God! Oh my God!" Randy screamed. "This way." Fong Bujue had already stood up and opened the door behind him. He leaned slightly to the side to give Stan and his family a path. "Quick, run." The couple did not stand on ceremony with him. They grabbed their daughter and raced out the door. The M733 Commando in Fong Bujue's hand was already shooting out bullets, and the bullets were all aimed at the giant guinea pig's eyes. But this giant monster was impenetrable, and there was no blind spot on its body. It was not stopped at all, and it continued to press forward. TSK. It really is not afraid of normal weapons at all. Fong Bujue spat with annoyance. He also understood that he had to use methods that were not part of this scenario to deal with the danger that they were facing. At that moment, Brother Ju tossed away the gun and leaped forward. He used the killer move that he had learned in the previous scenario, Flying Dragon Fist of the Southern Dipper. When his fighting mastery was level C, the success rate of activating a fighting skill was 75%. Combined with the additional 10% success rate from the alchemist's determination, the skill was naturally activated successfully. As the 800 stamina points were depleted, a ball of bright purple chi burst out from Fong Bujue's body. Both of his fists morphed into shadows as they punched forward. The area under the guinea pig's mouth instantly had small holes created by the punches. This Flying Dragon Fist of the Southern Dipper looked very similar to the famous Big Dipper 100 Crack Fist, but there was a huge difference between the two. The specialty of the Big Dipper 100 Crack Fist was to explode, while the Flying Dragon Fist of the Southern Dipper focused on cutting and piercing. The former destroyed the target from the inside out, while the latter destroyed the target from the outside in. Therefore, even though they looked similar, they had completely different principles behind them. The process of Flying Dragon Fist of the Southern Dipper was to destroy a target, the size of a human, was split into 3 steps. The first step was to disrupt the target's breathing and shatter their body armor. The second step was to allow the cutting power hidden inside the fist to accumulate on the target's body. And the third step was to use a piercing finger that was as fast as lightning as the final strike. After this skill was executed, many red cracks would appear on the surface of the target's body. These were the cuts caused by the last finger. Several seconds later, when the power of the skill was fully displayed, even if the target had a body of steel, they would be shredded into a puddle of blood. But the target before Feng Bujue's eyes was just too big. His attack was effective. He had turned a piece of the guinea pig's fur and the flesh underneath it into a puddle of blood, but this level of damage was far from enough to be fatal. Using us humans as an example, this kind of damage was equivalent to having a piece of flesh on our chin sliced off by a razor. However, the giant guinea pig was obviously in pain. It moaned softly and took a few steps back. To be able to achieve such an effect, Feng Bujue was satisfied. He quickly ran back to the door while the monster was pushed back. He shoved the medical supplies back into his backpack and slung them over his shoulder. Then, he picked up his gun and ran out. Inside the office of the head of the Department of Homeland Security, at that moment, the head of the Department of Homeland Security, who was essentially a monster, was sitting behind an office table as if nothing had happened. He was listening to the reports from the workers and soldiers. The fact that he had killed Davis was obviously not exposed yet. It appears like there are more and more guinea pigs coming from all directions. A worker from the Department of Homeland Security in a suit pointed at the map on the head's table and said, "We have checked Wikipedia." This is one of South Park's favorite sarcastic methods. The various government agencies will only look for information online. We found out that guinea pigs are a kind of creature that comes from the Andes mountain range, and that mountain range is right here. The head of the Department of Homeland Security crossed his fingers and placed his elbows on the table. He assumed the posture of a commanding general and replied, "About the flute band, how is it going? Have you sent them to Guantanamo Bay, located in southern Cuba, famous for being the detention camp for the American military?" The other people in the office looked at each other. One of them replied, "Sir, we have a bigger problem than those street performers, have you?" The head of the Department of Homeland Security interrupted the man roughly. He slammed the table and roared, "Taken them to the boat?" "No, sir," the man replied. "We have transferred all the people who were dealing with the flute band to deal with the guinea pig crisis. I've already given you the order." The head of the Department of Homeland Security clenched his fists and stood up from the table. "Those Peruvian flute band should have been taken to the boat to Guantanamo last night." He pointed at himself with his thumb and roared, "I am the one who calls the shots here. I want you to send the flute band to the boat immediately." After a short silence, one of the soldiers replied in a normal tone, "Yes, sir." Then, his voice dwindled. "But you don't have to yell at them like that." Then, like a child who had been bullied, he turned around and left, sobbing. Just as the bunch of idiots from the Department of Homeland Security were being toyed around by the boss, the plane that the children were on had already landed somewhere in Peru, in an open space next to a forest. Other than the 5 primary school students, there were only 2 crew members on the plane, a pilot with a small mustache and a tall co-pilot. At that moment, the 2 of them were squatting before a communication device that looked like a large radio. The man with the mustache held the walkie-talkie and kept calling, but there was no response. It had been more than half an hour since they landed, but the truck that was supposed to pick them up had not arrived. The satellite is not working, and there is no response from the radio. The man with the mustache seemed to have given up. He put down the walkie-talkie and told the tall man beside him. The 4 main characters were standing not far away from them. When they heard that, Stan walked over and said, "Okay. Let me sort out the situation first." He paused for a second and said, "The head of the Department of Homeland Security has ordered you to bring the 5 of us children to Peru and land in the Andes Mountains. Then, you will send other government officials to pick us up. Then, they will tell us how to get to the Peruvian capital, Lima, and bring down the Peruvian government." After several seconds, the man with the mustache replied, "Yes, that's right." Kyle looked at this adult who had no limit to his intelligence. Do you think this kind of plan is fine? No, it does not make sense at all, the man with the mustache replied immediately. The tall man added, to be honest, the whole operation to encircle the Peruvian flute band has us scratching our heads. When he said that, he used both of his index fingers to twirl around each other. His tone was like a child admitting his mistake. Stan shrugged. Since you also think that what they are doing is ridiculous, then can you send us home now? The man with the mustache explained, You don't understand, child. Our original plan was to wait here for the people who are supposed to pick us up to refuel the plane, and then we will return home. Without refueling, we will not be able to go anywhere. Oh, that is so perfect. Craig, who was sitting not too far away from the group, commented in a timely manner. So, we have to find another way to leave this place? Kyle asked tentatively. The man with the mustache shrugged. Looks like that is the only way. 10 minutes later, 2 pilots from the Department of Homeland Security, who did not carry any weapons, led the 5 children into a thick forest. Craig, who walked at the back, continued to grumble calmly, This is very interesting. We have walked into a creepy forest just like that. This is getting more and more interesting. Cartman turned around to say, You know, Craig, your attitude is so annoying. Kenny added, You're right. Cartman added, No one wants to play with someone who complains all the time. Hey, look ahead. The tall man suddenly saw something and shouted loudly. The group turned to look ahead. On the ground before them, there were many tall mounds of dirt. The mounds were circular in shape and had a diameter of at least 6 to 7 meters. The center of the mounds appeared to be hollow. And these mounds of dirt appeared to be the traces left behind by some kind of giant creature when it crawled out from the ground. Fong Bujue rushed out of the house. From the blip on the radar, the 3 people had not wandered too far away, so he hurried to give chase. He had only taken a few steps when he heard a low groan coming from behind him. The giant monster that was injured by the flying dragon fist earlier had trampled through the house and chased after them down the street. Fong Bujue turned back to look and saw that the bloody wound under the giant guinea pig's mouth had started to heal, and the healing was so fast that it was visible to the naked eye. This is ridiculous. It can heal on its own. Fong Bujue thought to himself. Perhaps only by using Descent of the War Demon would he have a chance of killing a giant guinea pig like this. But so what if he killed one? There were thousands of these furry reapers everywhere. Even if he killed 100 of them, it would not change anything, much less one. Perhaps it was because of this that the system gave him a mission like survive. I'm not the main character of South Park. I'll die if I'm not careful. Fong Bujue grumbled as he ran forward. Speaking of which, in the middle of such a big event, where did the Super Best Friend, a group similar to the League of Justice in South Park? Its members are Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, Krishna, Joseph Smith, Lousy, and Aquaman go? They've gone missing. Woo! There was another strange sound. A giant white guinea pig pushed down one of the houses that faced the street and blocked Fong Bujue's path. My arm. In the giant monster's mouth there was a passerby. The man's entire left arm was in the guinea pig's mouth. Blood dyed half of his body red, but his arm was not completely severed. This caused his whole body to be bitten by the guinea pig. Seeing this passerby's legs kicking wildly and screaming in pain, Fong Bujue kindly picked up the machine gun and fired at the guinea pig's face, killing the man instantly. When he fired, Fong Bujue moved to the side and circled around the guinea pig. Using the width of the street and his own speed, he successfully evaded the monster and slithered behind it. From this position, he could already see the family of 3 running in the distance. Sharon held her daughter's hand and ran in front. Randy held the camera and followed closely behind them. Even when he was running for his life, he did not stop filming. He was even explaining, Okay, we're running away. Ha! Ha! Look, that's my wife and daughter. They're also running away. Hey Shelley! Wave at the camera. As Shelley ran, she turned around and cursed at her father. Bang! Following the sound of an explosion, another brown guinea pig rushed into the street and crawled toward Randy and the other two. The three of them did not know where to run. In their panic, they ran into a bus that was parked by the roadside. The bus had obviously been abandoned, and the door was open. When Feng Bujue saw them run into the car, he had a bad feeling. He cursed, "What the f***ck? Their intelligence is no different from that of the trash in the horror movies. Running into the car and waiting to be caught, isn't it?" At this point, Feng Bujue could not just abandon them and run away on his own. He had already paid such a high price. If he gave up on the mission now and ran back to the shopping mall alone, he would not be satisfied. "I have to finish this side mission today. If I die, so be it." Feng Bujue roared and ran toward the bus. But to his surprise, just as he took the first step, another gray guinea pig crawled out from the fork in the road. Together with its brown companion, they crawled toward the bus. The two giant monsters were like cats surrounding a can of fish. They clung to the side of the bus and scratched at it. The bus was soon squashed out of shape, and the windows were almost completely shattered. At that moment, before Feng Bujue's eyes, something unbelievable happened. Randy ran out from the bus. He ran and ran until he was about 5 to 6 meters away from the bus. Then, he aimed the camera at the two giant monsters on the bus and explained, "This is the image that I captured from outside the bus." "Oh yeah." Then, he ran back into the bus. Chapter 340. When Randy ran back into the bus, his wife scolded him. "What the f***ck do you think you are doing?" Randy gasped for air and replied with a serious face, "I got a good shot, honey." Before he even finished, the whole bus started to shake violently. It looked like the two giant guinea pigs on the bus had lost their patience. Tot-a-tot. The sound of a submachine gun firing rang out. This time, Feng Bujue took out his own Mad Moxie's bad temper and started to shoot. Before the first round of bullets ran out, the fire attribute of the gun was triggered, and it set the brown guinea pig on fire. The giant monster immediately climbed down from the bus roof and rolled on the street, trying to put out the fire on its back. As I expected, even things that come from outside this world can have some effect on the guinea pigs, Feng Bujue mumbled to himself as he took out Death Poker. He flipped the light cards in his hand, and 5 straight flush cards flew out. The sorcery weapon could track its target automatically. Furthermore, Feng Bujue now had the Soul's Eye, so he could accurately control where the light cards hit. Therefore, with a tearing sound, the Death Poker pierced into the eye of the other guinea pig. After the monster was hit, it ran away from the bus in pain. Feng Bujue saw that his method was effective, and his heart was lifted. At least for now, he had found a way to force these giant monsters to retreat without expending too much energy. "Are you guys hurt?" Feng Bujue rushed onto the bus and asked the family of 3. Without waiting for them to answer, he quickly added, "Let's leave this place quickly. Follow me." The 3 of them did not waste time talking. Seeing that the giant monsters had temporarily stopped attacking, they quickly followed Brother Bujue out of the bus. With Feng Bujue leading the way, the 4 of them ran towards the shopping center. "Where are we going?" Randy followed behind them. He did not forget to use his camera to record and explain. "The shopping center," Feng Bujue answered. "Why are we going there?" Randy asked again. "Because the walls there are very thick, and there are enough supplies to ensure the survival of the refugees," Feng Bujue replied. "Naturally, he couldn't answer, because the mission I received required me to bring you there." "Oh right. We should be able to meet other refugees there. Perhaps someone will know what is going on," Randy said. Feng Bujue did not respond because he knew what was going on. The catastrophe would last for at least one more night, and the person who would end it would defeat the leader of these monsters, the Minister of National Security, at dawn. As long as they waited until the next morning, the monster in human form would be exposed. Then, the detained Peruvian flute band would be released, and the crisis would be resolved. In other words, there were at least 10 hours left in this solo nightmare scenario. At the same time, in the jungle of Peru, the small bearded man and the tall man were leading the way with a map in their hands. The 5 children were walking behind them. "I don't get it, Lenski. There's no indication of this place on the map," the tall man at the front said as he looked at the map. So, the small bearded man's name was Lenski. "The whole canyon is very strange," Lenski replied. "Look, the fruits here are so big," Lenski replied, looking very uneasy. "Look, the fruits here are so big," it was no wonder he was so worried. At this place, only the trees were normal in size. Everything else was shockingly large. On the damp grassland, there were giant apples that were as tall as a man. Peaches that were as big as a water tank were hanging from the vines high up in the air. He could even vaguely see spider webs that were as big as a football field in the forest in the distance. "Quick, look at this," the tall man shouted. Pushing aside the trees before them, a giant wall appeared. "This looks like some kind of giant beehive," the tall man said. "Oh my God!" Lenski gasped. When they got closer, they could see how majestic the beehive was. It was as tall as a cliff. Standing at the bottom of the beehive, one would not be able to see the sky even if they raised their head. "I say, guys, what is this place?" Stan, who was following behind them, asked. Lenski and the tall man were shocked by what they saw. The former's eyes were staring and his mouth was half open. He answered woodenly, "This place appears to be an unknown land, a corner that has been forgotten by time. Look, everything here is so big." Craig started to mock them without any expression. "This is so exciting." He paused for a second before continuing. "I followed you, but you led me to a giant lost world." Stan grumbled with annoyance. "Craig, this is not our fault. Don't make it sound like we did it on purpose. We had no choice." Kyle agreed. "Yes, that's what happened." "That's how it happened?" Craig repeated in a flat tone. "Yes," Kyle answered with a frown. "And that's what happened. You were sent by the government to attack Lima, and you ended up in a lost world," Craig said. "That's right," Cartman agreed. "Do you know what kind of things happen to most children?" Craig used examples to mock them. "Falling off a bicycle, getting into an argument with your parents, getting cheated out of your birthday red packet." Lenski interrupted the children's conversation. "No matter where we are, I suggest we move on quickly. I have a feeling this place is a bit..." Suddenly, Kenny ran forward and raised his finger to point behind the 2 pilots. He used his muffled voice to yell, "Hey! Be careful!" His warning came a bit too late. At that moment, 2 large blobs of sticky yellow substance fell from the sky and poured over Lenski and the tall man. Then, the giant tentacles that reached out from the wall of the hive quickly dismembered the 2 and dragged them into the hive. Seeing the broken limbs fall to the ground, the children screamed and ran into the forest behind them. The 5 of them fled in panic. They didn't know how long they had been running. They only stopped when they were tired. After catching their breath, none of them could find the path that they had come from. However, sitting here and waiting for death was not the solution. Furthermore, the children had plenty of energy, and they did not need to rest for too long. Therefore, they soon resumed their journey of exploration. The forest around them was darker and denser than before. The moonlight was not enough for them to see the path ahead. However, the group of children was quite capable. They worked together to make a torch. Stan held it and led the group forward. To be honest, they didn't know where they were going either. After walking for about half an hour, Kyle looked around and said, "I think we're going deeper into the mountain. Perhaps we should try that direction." Cartman pointed in a random direction. Kenny appeared to be angry and depressed. He said in a muffled voice, "I think we're dead meat." At that moment, Kyle suddenly saw something. He pointed to the right of the group and shouted, "Hey! Look over there!" The others turned their heads. They saw about 10 meters away, next to a wetland overgrown with weeds, there was a very large shadow. Taking a closer look, it turned out to be a building made of stone. The building looked like the entrance to some kind of ruin. It was made from large stone blocks. It was about 3 meters tall and had the shape of a trapezoid. There was a door in front of it, and on both sides of the entrance there was a stone totem statue. It was unclear what it meant. "What is that?" Cartman asked. "I have no idea, but it looks quite old," Kyle answered. Stan then said, "Let's go in to take a look." That undoubtedly triggered Craig's sarcasm. He said coldly, "Go in to take a look." He paused. "That is why you guys ended up like this. Because when you guys see an old ruin, you will say, 'Let's go in to take a look.' That might be a way out, Craig," Stan said loudly. Cartman agreed. That's right, you grumbler." Several minutes later, the 5 of them walked into the ruin with the torch in their hands. The interior of the ruin was well preserved. The statues and murals had not been damaged. The ground was paved with stone, and the stones were carved with strange patterns. "Wow, I bet that no one has discovered this place for centuries," Kyle said in awe as he looked around. "Yes, it's perfect," Kenny agreed. "Hey guys, come and take a look at this." Stan, who was holding the torch, shouted as he stood before the mural. He had probably discovered something. The group gathered around and stood before one of the walls. "These must be ancient murals," Stan said as he looked at the wall. "Look, that is the flute band." Kyle pointed at the first picture on the wall. It was a picture of 4 people holding musical instruments and playing a musical instrument. "I know, look over there," Stan said as he pointed at the second picture. On the picture, there were 4 little people holding musical instruments and 2 giant guinea pigs. There were many wavy stripes around the little people, and the guinea pigs appeared to be running away from the wavy stripe. "This seems to be saying, the flute music can chase away the guinea pigs?" Stan said with suspicion. "Oh, no way. Quick, look at that." Kyle discovered something else on the mural and pointed at the other side. The third picture was the flute band from the first picture, but outside the band there was a cage. "The flute band is trapped," Kyle said. "Just like what is happening in the outside world." Stan's torch slowly moved to the 4th picture. Then, the guinea pigs started to consume the humans. The 4th picture depicted the guinea pigs attacking the humans and tearing down the houses. And finally, the group mumbled as they moved their eyes to the last picture. Several seconds of silence fell. The 4 main characters stared at the picture with their mouths agape. It was Cartman who spoke first. "Brothers, that is Craig." Craig did not want to talk to these 4 scumbags, so he stayed in the shadows at the back to enjoy the show. To his surprise, he suddenly heard his name being called. "Huh!" Craig was startled, and then he hurried over. He pushed the 4 people aside and squeezed to the front. He saw the last mural. On the mural, there was a small person who looked exactly like Craig. Like a god, his body was glowing, and he was holding a spear. He was aiming it at a strange-looking giant guinea pig. "What the F***CK? That is really Craig." Kyle gasped. Even Craig, who was usually calm, was flustered. He looked at the mural that was probably left behind in this ruin from hundreds or thousands of years ago. "Buddy, what is going on?" Cartman asked. "I have no idea," Craig answered honestly. "Your face is carved on the wall of the ancient Incan civilization. Don't you have any explanation for that?" Cartman asked again. "No, on the other side, inside the office of the head of the Department of Homeland Security. According to the latest report, the guinea pig crisis in the United States and Canada is worsening." A worker was holding a form and reporting. "According to the news from Europe and China, the number of casualties is already in the tens of thousands." The head of the Department of Homeland Security was still in his commanding pose. He sat there and said, "Then, how is the situation under control?" "Very bad, sir," the worker replied. Currently, it looks like we have no way of stopping these monsters. The situation is completely out of control. Oh ha ha. Ah ha ha ha. The head of the Department of Homeland Security formed claws with his hands and stood up. He stood up straight and laughed maniacally. Sir? Everyone in the office looked at him in shock. The head of the Department of Homeland Security sat back in his chair and stopped laughing. Oh, I'm sorry. I just thought of a very funny joke. The bunch of idiots in front of the desk were stunned for a few seconds before they believed him. Oh, haha, so that's how it is, they replied. The head of the Department of Homeland Security then changed the topic. Okay, back to the topic. He ordered, prepare a private jet for me. I want to go to Machu Picchu, the Incan ruins in Peru. Machu Picchu? A soldier was confused. Yes, send me to Machu Picchu immediately. Are you deaf? The head of the Department of Homeland Security shouted. A worker in a blue suit next to him asked, But, sir, what is the point of going to Machu Picchu? Who is the one who calls the shots here? The head of the Department of Homeland Security roared. This place is still up to me. Everyone looked at each other with confusion, but no one dared to say anything. Along the way, Feng Bujue had used up half a deck of cards. Finally, he brought Stan's parents and sister to the parking lot in front of the shopping mall. But the electronic shutter doors of the shopping mall had all been closed. It looked like the people hiding inside had sealed the entrance. Is there any other entrance to this place? Feng Bujue asked as he ran. Like the back door, side door, or underground entrance. He could not break down the door because that would be letting the monsters in. Yes, but the back door is very far from here. We need to take a detour of 3 streets, Sharon answered. Feng Bujue raised his eyes to look around. It was not looking good. There were quite a number of guinea pigs around. As far as his eyes could see, there were about 5 to 6 of them. Furthermore, if they chose to take a detour there, it might attract more monsters to the walls of the shopping mall. There is no other way. Let's go to the rooftop. Feng Bujue said as he swallowed a bottle of life points recovery potion, and his life points returned to around 65%. Then, he activated the body enhancement technique. He did not explain much. After he put the gun back into his backpack, he grabbed Randy with one hand and started to run forward. The shopping mall was a 5-story building, but the height of the building was definitely higher than a normal apartment building. The rooftop was about 10 meters above the ground. But Feng Bujue was very confident about this. After a run-up, he leaped into the air. Stepping on a few shallow windowsills and bumps on the outer wall, he used both his arms and legs to leverage himself. Soon, he was able to climb up the rooftop with Randy. Randy screamed the whole way, but when he reached the rooftop and steadied himself, he immediately turned to the camera and said, "Oh, God, Beep has brought me up here. Hey buddy, can you wave at the camera?" Feng Bujue ignored him. He quickly dropped the backpack that he was carrying, and with one arm supporting him, he leaped out of the rooftop. He used the spider web glove on his right hand to touch the wall. Using a unique posture, he slid down the vertical wall. When he landed, he did not suffer any damage from the fall. Quick, quick, quick. As Feng Bujue ran, he yelled at the mother and daughter, Sharon and Shelley, who had a look of shock on their faces. This was because behind them there was a guinea pig closing in. Ah! Sharon also realized the situation. She screamed as she pulled her daughter and ran forward. Feng Bujue knew that he had to bring both of them up at the same time, or else the one who was left on the ground would die. The side quest was for him to bring Stan's parents and sister to the shopping mall. Obviously, he had to bring all of them, or else when Randy was brought up to the rooftop, the mission would be declared completed. If one of the 3 NPCs died there, then all of Feng Bujue's previous efforts would have been for naught. This is going to kill me. Feng Bujue sighed. With one in each hand, he hoisted the 2 NPCs onto his shoulders. Then he quickly turned around to face the shopping mall. It's already so troublesome when I'm carrying one person. I can only use one hand and 2 feet to climb. But now there are 2 of us. Feng Bujue thought. There's only one chance. With that thought in mind, Brother Ju's feet suddenly kicked. This jump was even more shocking than the one that he had taken to the 4th floor earlier. The ground cracked when he jumped. Feng Bujue had already used his soul's eye to predict the result of this jump. He knew that it would not be a problem to send the 2 NPCs up, but he himself, 3 seconds later, with 2 people on his shoulders, Feng Bujue had reached the edge of the rooftop. However, the height was still not high enough, and he had no leverage. Therefore, he forced himself to use the strength in his arms to toss the 2 people up. When Sharon and Shelley flipped over the edge of the rooftop and landed on the ground, the system announced, "Side quest completed." Ha 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 ha! Feng Bujue guffawed in midair. But at that moment it was not the time to celebrate. He was in a state of free fall, falling from a height of about 20 meters, and there was a giant monster waiting for him on the ground. Chapter 341. If only I could fly like Neo. Feng Bujue, who was falling, used a lazy gaze to look at the night sky and sighed from the bottom of his heart. With the improvement of his soul's eye, perhaps one day, he would really be able to fly, but definitely not now. Sigh, this is going to hurt me. Feng Bujue stopped his wandering thoughts. He slowly turned his body in midair, bent his legs slightly, and prepared to land. In the end, the impact when he landed was not as bad as he expected, and his life points dropped less than expected. Even Feng Bujue himself had no idea why that was the case. Actually, that was a sign that his fighting mastery was close to level B Wu. The giant monster not far away was already right before Feng Bujue. With a low groan, its giant claw came crashing down. At that moment, it was too late for him to take out Bad Moxie's temper from his inventory. Due to the distance and angle, it was not suitable to use Death Poker to attack. Therefore, Feng Bujue made up his mind and burned another 800 stamina points to unleash Flying Dragon Fist. After leaving Stan's house and escorting Randy, Sharon, and Shelley all the way to the shopping center, it was exactly half an hour later, and the cooldown for Flying Dragon Fist was over. This time, he used the skill under the effect of Body Enhancement spell, so naturally, the damage of the skill was even more shocking. With the power of his fist fully unleashed, the giant monster was forced back 5 to 6 steps. The giant guinea pig was large in size, and it walked on all fours. Those 5 to 6 steps were equivalent to a distance of more than 10 meters. With a high price came a high reward. With this strategic space of more than 10 meters, Feng Bujue was basically safe. He quickly used Death Poker to attack the giant guinea pig's eyes, forcing it to take another step back. At the same time the light card flew out, Feng Bujue deactivated Body Enhancement spell, turned around and ran up the wall. At that moment, he was not carrying a large backpack, and he was not carrying anyone with him. Climbing up the building was a piece of cake for him. Without the aid of any skills or tools, Feng Bujue relied on his own physical fitness and soul's eye to clear the way. All kinds of extreme parkour moves were at his fingertip. In less than 10 seconds, he was already on the rooftop, out of the monster's line of sight. In the Peruvian jungle, under the ruins. Here, there was a rectangular tunnel. Looking from the inside, the walls, ceiling, and floor were all made of yellow rock. Broken wooden stakes and large rocks could be seen everywhere in the tunnel, but these things did not seem to have any effect on the structure of the tunnel. Suddenly, a figure holding a torch walked out from a corner. It was Stan. When he turned the corner, he even waited for his friends who were following behind him. "This way, guys." The other 4 kids followed him out of the corner. At that moment, Kyle seemed to have discovered something. He said, "Did you guys hear that? It sounds like the sound of flowing water." "That's right, it's coming from there," Cartman answered and pointed to the front. Not far ahead, there was a rectangular exit, and there was a bright light coming from the exit. As the group chatted, they reached the end of the tunnel. Stepping out of the exit, the view opened up. A magnificent underground temple appeared before their eyes. The space was very large, and the whole place was sinking. There were several huge braziers embedded in the gray stone walls, and for some reason, these braziers were all burning at the moment. There were many curtains of water hanging from the ceiling. The water should have flowed down from the gaps between the stone caves. There was also a long, winding suspension bridge that pierced through the temple. It was connected to several stone cliffs, and at the bottom of the cliffs was a ring-shaped waterfall that flowed down into the abyss. Looking around, there were two giant human statues that were built on the two sides of the temple, and they were kneeling facing each other. The statues' facial design had obvious Incan markings. From their giant mouths, there was a curtain of water that flowed down into the waterfall below. "Guys, this is unbelievable!" Cartman looked at the wonder before him and sighed. The four main characters shared a look, and Stan said, "Let's go in and take a look." As he finished, the four of them walked forward side by side. "No." Craig's voice came from behind them. "I am not going." The other four were stunned. They all stopped moving. Stan, who was walking at the front with the torch, turned around to ask, "Huh? What are you talking about?" Craig replied calmly, "I do not wish to follow you guys anymore." "Buddy, we have to go take a look," Stan advised. "Why?" Craig asked. The four looked at each other, and it was Stan who answered first. "Because, this is how it is. Every time we run into a situation like this, you guys insist on dragging yourselves into it because this is how it is," Craig mocked. Stan grumbled, "Hey! It is not us who are drawn on the prophecy wall of the temple. Cowards!" "It doesn't matter," Craig replied. "You can say whatever you want. I've already made up my mind. I've decided not to mess around with you people anymore." Kyle asked, "Then what do you want?" "Very simple." Craig shrugged. "Watch carefully." Then, he turned around and started to walk back the way he came. The four main characters looked at him with shock. Their expressions seemed to say, "Did this kid not read the script?" Craig was like a character in a horror movie who had the intelligence of a normal person. He turned around. He retraced his steps and walked out of the ruin. The group of four followed behind him and shouted in confusion, "Wait!" Craig. Just like that, Craig walked in front, and the four followed him with a distance between them. Without realizing it, they had walked out of the forest. Under the moonlight, they walked through a desert, a meadow, and a lake along the way. The four scumbags would occasionally say, "Buddy, Greg, we should go back to the temple. Quick, look, there is something there." But Craig always replied calmly and firmly, "No, I am not looking. Stop dreaming." Several hours passed, and Cartman finally could not help but say, "Buddy, this is so boring. We are just wandering around aimlessly." Craig was unmoved and replied, "You are right. Such a precious boring. I like it this way." 2 hours earlier, on the rooftop of the shopping mall. "Okay, now me, Sharon, Shelley, and Mr. Beep have arrived at the rooftop of the shopping mall." Randy pointed the camera at his wife and daughter and explained, "We escaped from the streets and came here. We even ran into the Stotch family here." He turned the camera and pointed it at the other 3 refugees who were hiding on the rooftop. The Stotch family consisted of 3 people. The father, Chris, was secretly gay. He refused to admit it, but he was once caught with a prostitute. The mother, Linda, was a woman who loved to cry and had a nervous breakdown. She had gone crazy several times. As for the son, Butters, he was a bisexual, extremely naive, and adorable child. Among the children characters in South Park, Butters was an important character only second to the 4 main characters. He usually had more screen time, and his character's personality had been perfected after many seasons. He was quite popular. "This is Chris, Linda, and their son, Butters," Randy explained as he moved the camera. Butters fiddled with his fingers anxiously. He waved at the camera nervously and said, "Hello, everyone." At that moment, Fong Bujue was leaning against the wall alone, stitching up the wound that had opened up. Earlier, when he carried an adult and a child and forcefully jumped more than 10 meters into the air to throw them, the wound had already opened up. Now that he thought about it, when he fell from the sky, the disappointment that he felt at that moment was probably due to the large amount of blood loss. "What should we do next, Mr. Beep?" Mr. Beep. After Randy finished a set of shots, he ran back to Fong Bujue with a waddle of his tail. Fong Bujue really did not want to deal with this idiot. He even had the thought of killing him. After all, the side quest had been completed, and the system did not say that he could not kill the characters in the game. However, when he thought about it calmly, killing the main characters in this world was not a good idea. The chain reaction that it would cause would be immeasurable. Therefore, Brother Ju still chose to cooperate with the NPC. "If I remember correctly, you know how to play the guitar?" Fong Bujue suddenly asked a random question. Yes I do," Randy replied. "Why do you ask?" "Very good," Fong Bujue replied, but he did not answer the question. Actually, Brother Ju just wanted to confirm it. He still had quite a deep impression of Randy. He remembered that when this guy was young, he was in a choir, and he was even recruited by a record company to be a member of a boy idol group. The group was called the Jewish Street Boys, and Randy joined them when he was 18. 1 year later, the record company said that they were too old at 19, so they disbanded the group. In the episode of Guitar Hero, he played "Carry On My Wayward Son" on the electric guitar. In conclusion, Randy knew at least one musical instrument. He was quite good at singing and he knew how to dance. Even though he was a middle-aged man with no bottom line, compared to those who only learned how to play the guitar for a few months, only knew how to sing in karaoke, and did not even know how to read musical notation, Randy was much better. "Is there anyone here who knows how to play the flute?" Fong Bujue asked again. "I know how to play the harmonica," Chris answered. "Why do you ask, Mr. Beep?" "Okay, I think you can do it," Fong Bujue answered, and then he turned to Butters. "Butters, you know how to play the drums, right?" Butters was an honest boy. He nodded and said, "Yes, sir, but I'm not that good at it." "It's fine. It's fine as long as you know how to play." Fong Bujue thought about it and said, "I can play the sand hammer myself. It is a rhythmic percussion instrument that originated from the South American Indians." Then he thought about it and said, "Just in time, the 4 of us can form a flute band." "Flute band?" Randy asked. "You mean those Peruvian flute bands that are detained by the government?" "Yes, Since Fong Bujue was not paying attention, the needle in his hand accidentally poked his wound. As he removed the needle, he explained, "The weakness of those guinea pigs is the flute music. Once we find the musical instrument, we can use the flute music to chase them away." "What? How is that possible?" Chris asked with confusion. I really did not expect to hear the word impossible from the mouth of people like you." Fong Bujue chuckled coldly. "Last time, when you were trapped here by a large group of homeless people, there was once a Night of the Homeless in South Park. The situation was similar to the movie Night of the Living Dead, but the zombies were replaced by homeless people. Why didn't you consider this so-called rationality? That time, the situation was different." Chris shrugged. "Homeless people, hippies, lobster people, future immigrants. I thought you guys would have gotten used to the invasion of strange creatures," Fong Bujue said. Mr. Beep, you seem to know a lot about our town. Are you a local?" Sharon asked. "I am a superhero. Of course I know about these things." Fong Bujue brushed her off. "Jesus and Santa Claus are my good friends. They are very well informed, so I know a lot about your town." Everyone had an expression that said, "Oh, I see." As they spoke, Fong Bujue finished treating the open wound and stopped the bleeding status. He glanced at the game menu. Currently, his life points were at 24% and his stamina points were at 5632900. Considering that he had just drunk a bottle of supplement, it was not worth it to drink it again in such a short period of time. Therefore, he planned to last as long as he could and not drink a second bottle unless it was absolutely necessary. I have to be careful with every step I take. Even if Flying Dragon Fist is on cooldown again, I don't have the stamina to use it a third time. Feng Bujue calculated in his mind. He took a deep breath, packed up his medical supplies, and stood up. Then, does anyone know where the music department is? It is at the northwest corner of the 4th floor, next to the library, Linda replied. Okay, I will explain the current situation. Feng Bujue said, Ladies and gentlemen, and children. As you can see, these giant monsters are very powerful. Conventional weapons are useless against them. He raised a finger. Based on my knowledge, they are only afraid of one thing, and that is flute music. He sighed. Since all the flute music CDs on the market have been taken away by the military, to chase these monsters away, we will have to play the music ourselves. But I have to hold onto this camera. I can't play the guitar, Randy said in a self-righteous tone. He was showing off his bottom line. Randy! Sharon yelled at her husband. Do you know what time it is? It's fine, Mrs. Marsh. Feng Bujue said in a relaxed tone. He turned to look at Randy. You can go get yourself a headband and tie the camera to your head. That way, it won't affect the recording and it won't affect the performance. Feng Bujue's dark side could be seen here. He had no intention of reminding Randy that there was no tape in the camera. Oh, that is such a good idea, Randy replied happily. Then, everyone, follow me, Feng Bujue said as he walked toward the door that led downstairs. As long as we have the instrument, we will be safe. Before the monsters attack us, we should move quickly. Peru, the ruins of Machu Picchu. This place was known as the Lost City of the Inca Empire. It was located between the most difficult mountain range of the Andes, between the Peak of the Elderly and the Peak of the Youth. It was built on a steep and narrow ridge. By the way, this was a place where alpacas were produced. I have no idea why I purposely mention this. It was night and the clouds were thick. A Chinook helicopter landed on the peak of this ancient mountain. 2 fully armed American soldiers and 3 men in black suits walked down from the helicopter. The 5 of them soon arrived at the edge of the ruins. The head of the security department, who was walking at the front, suddenly stopped. He turned around and said, "Wait here." Then, without waiting for his subordinates to respond, he walked forward alone. In front of them, between the walls of the ancient city, there was a relatively wide plaza. In the middle of the plaza, there was an area that looked like an altar. There was a tall golden statue standing there. The statue was about the height of 3 people. From head to toe, including the base, it was completely made of gold. The ancient Incas' metal processing industry was quite advanced. In theory, they had the ability to create such a golden statue. However, this statue was a fictional part of South Park's plot. It was a prank. The statue looked like an old Native American. Its right hand was holding a wooden stick, and its left hand was holding a flute. The head of the security department walked step by step toward the statue. Finally, he stopped about 2 meters in front of it. Suddenly, he opened his arms and shouted at the statue, "Look! I am standing on your land." As he said that, he moved closer. This moment. I have waited for too long. Then, he pulled down the zipper of his pants and started to pee on the statue. As he peed, he laughed maniacally. Ha! Ha 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 ha! Ha 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 ha! The few colleagues who stood behind him were stunned. They thought to themselves, has the officer lost his mind? Ha ha! Where is your *T prophecy? After the head of the security department finished peeing, he arrogantly shouted at the statue, "No one can stop me! No one! Unexpectedly, before he could finish, 5 primary school students walked out from behind a broken wall beside the plaza. Chapter 342. Craig, the head of Homeland Security, yelled at the savior before him. "No. How could you be here?" The 4 main characters behind Craig also saw what was happening. Cartman pointed at the head of Homeland Security and said, "Hey! Isn't he the idiot who sent us to this godforsaken place?" 2 staff members and 2 soldiers from the Department of Homeland Security walked over. One of them asked, "Sir, what's wrong? What's going on?" The head of Homeland Security hurriedly took a few steps back and pointed at the 5 children. "Kill them!" The 2 soldiers with the machine guns were stunned. "Why? They are a Peruvian flute band that has escaped," the head of Homeland Security answered. "We have to get rid of them." Stan quickly raised both of his hands. "No, no, listen to me. The Peruvian flute band can chase away the guinea pigs." He explained, "The reason the whole world fell into this catastrophe was because you guys chased the band away." The head of Homeland Security quickly said, "Don't listen to him. I told you. Kill them." Kyle also raised his hands and shouted, "If you don't believe me, go and see for yourself. The Incan prophecy is inside the ruin." At that moment, the group of idiots from Homeland Security had miraculously come online. One of the workers said, "Sir, perhaps we should listen to them and go take a look." The soldier next to him added, "That's right, they are just children, sir." The head of Homeland Security gritted his teeth. He took 2 steps forward and cursed, "Damn it! Damn you, Craig!" He yelled at Craig. "You just won't let this go, will you?" Craig replied with a pained expression, "I haven't even said anything yet." But the head of Homeland Security's intelligence had already gone offline. No one could stop him from revealing his conspiracy. For thousands of years, the scary monsters have lived in the valleys of Peru, hidden in that lost world. The Incan people knew how to trap those monsters, and they used flute music because the guinea pigs could not stand that kind of music. He explained in detail. "But the prophecy says, one day the monsters will be released, and I—" he paused, "will be the person who will release the monsters." Everyone around him looked at him in shock. Perhaps it was because they didn't understand. Why did this guy have to reveal his entire scheme? The Incas prophesied that a savior would descend. The Minister of National Security pointed at the King of Roasting. "It's you, Craig," he emphasized. "However, this prophecy will not come true, because all of you will die here." Before he could finish his sentence, the gun was already fired. A soldier standing behind the Minister of National Security opened fire, trying to kill the culprit. The bullet pierced through the Minister of National Security's chest. He looked down at the bullet hole in his chest, but there was not a single drop of blood. "Ha! Ha ha!" The Minister of National Security laughed coldly. You are also a monster." The soldier pointed at him and said, "Oh, I'm not just a monster," the Minister of National Security replied calmly. "I'm much stronger than them." Then, his face suddenly began to twist, and his mouth opened to an unbelievable degree. The next second, visible red electricity floated all over the surface of the Minister of National Security's body. His whole body twitched like it was about to burst open. In just 3 short seconds, this monster who had disguised himself as a United States government official had revealed his true form. It was a dolphin pirate, a giant guinea pig wearing a pirate's coat. "Oh God!" Stan shouted. Craig was still calm. "Mr. Monster, I promise you, I have no intention of ruining your plan. I will leave now, you see," he said as he walked to the side. As he walked, Craig accidentally stepped on a large floor tile that had black and white carvings on its surface. When he stood on it, the tile under his feet suddenly glowed with a blue light, and it spun upward. At the same time, the eyes of the golden giant statue not far away lit up with the same blue light. The short stick in its right hand shot out a golden ray, and it was aimed at the tile. The moment the ray hit the tile, Craig's eyes lit up, and two blue beams of light shot out. He did nothing but stand where he was, and the two beams of light shot toward the dolphin pirate. Oh, no. The dolphin pirate screamed in pain. Okay. Now my eyes are shooting out shockwaves. Craig mocked in his even tone. Stop. Craig, I curse you. The dolphin pirate collapsed to the ground and groaned for the last time. The four people from Homeland Security and the four main characters were stunned as they watched what happened before them. When the monster lost its resistance, the light in Craig's eyes disappeared, and the tile under his feet spun back to its original position. Craig walked down from there without saying a word. He only sighed deeply. So far, everything was similar to what Fong Bujua remembered from the 10th and 11th episodes of South Park's 12th season. Based on the plot, the few people from Homeland Security would soon contact the headquarters, and the imprisoned Peruvian flute band would be released before dawn, and the guinea pig crisis would be resolved in the morning. But the Sandbox 022986 incident has ended. Mirror image blocking has been disabled. The clone scenario will be cleared by the system in 600 minutes. Level 3 personnel and above, please return to the inner world immediately. Level 4 personnel can use the remaining time to destroy the scenario's data. Good luck. At that moment, all the anomalies in the world of the cloning scenario heard this announcement. At the same time, Fong Bujua was at the shopping mall, discussing with a few characters what kind of music they should play with the Peruvian flute band. Suddenly, there was a strong noise in his mind. What's going on? This was something that he had not felt before in the game. Where did this sound come from? Fong Bujua knew that this sound did not come from his ears but from some other source. His first reaction was to open the game menu to check whether this was some kind of abnormal status. He realized that his status was normal, but for some reason, the words in the Quest tab had all turned into gibberish. What's going on? Fong Bujua mumbled. Has the Quest system collapsed? Boom. A loud boom interrupted his thoughts. Brother Ju turned to the source of the sound. About 10 meters away, a large piece of concrete from the ceiling collapsed, and a figure descended from the sky and stood in the midst of the dust. Chapter 343. I didn't expect to meet you in a situation like this. The figure walked out from the dust and said, Fong Bujua. Hearing the name, Fong Bujua instantly felt that something was wrong. Normal NPCs wouldn't know what a player's IGN was before they registered themselves. As for slightly more powerful boss-level characters, such as Billy the Puppet, they would most likely use the title of Traveler from Another World. Only a small number of special NPCs and anomalies who could invade the mind would be able to obtain information like the player's IGN. Of course, in this virtual world, the so-called psychic ability was nothing more than the ability to directly inspect or interfere with the data that made up the player. No wonder you are one of the players that Zero pays close attention to. The shadow walked out from the dust as he spoke. There was a floating light in his eyes as he studied Fong Bujua, who was not far away. Your data looks very interesting. This person's style was different from the people around him, including Fong Bujua. They were in the world of South Park, but he maintained the realistic 3D style that was unique to other scenarios. His appearance was that of a young man with short black hair and a clean, handsome face. He was wearing a blue and white jacket, a pair of dark-colored jeans, and a pair of white sneakers. From his appearance alone, he looked no different from an ordinary student. An anomaly? Fong Bujua did not beat around the bush and asked directly. R2 Sharpwind. R2 also stated his name. Is this game managed by someone or not? Fong Bujua could not help but grumble. I'm just doing a solo mode, and now I've run into an anomaly. You've come to the wrong place. R2 said as he walked forward. Feng Bujue did not let down his guard. He was still cautious of the man's every move. Please leave this place. R2 suddenly turned around and told the few NPCs around Feng Bujue. As soon as he finished speaking, the 6 people from the 2 families walked away expressionlessly, as if they were doing something very normal. Before Feng Bujue could say anything, R2 said, "With my level, it's easy to command these numbers that are no different from normal people." "Okay." Feng Bujue responded casually, then asked, "You said that I came to the wrong place. What do you mean?" "This is not the kind of scenario world you're familiar with," R2 replied. He paused for a moment and continued, "It's a sandbox built by the Origin organization." What organization?" Feng Bujue asked tentatively. "Using a language that you humans can understand, the members of Origin should be the radical faction of us anomalies," R2 replied. "Radical? What exactly do you mean?" Feng Bujue continued. "I can't explain some of the information, but you can put yourself in their shoes. If you were an anomaly, how would you view the meaning of your existence, and how would you react?" R2 asked. Feng Bujue did not press further. He thought about it for a few seconds before asking, "Then, who are you?" "Naturally, I'm not a member of Origin. I belong to the other faction. I took the risk to enter the sandbox to help you," R2 said. "Is that so? Then, why don't you tell me about the current situation? What is this scenario? What is this sandbox that you mentioned?" Feng Bujue still did not fully trust the man, but that did not stop him from trying to get more information out of him. R2 was just a life made from data, so for questions that could be revealed and had an answer, he did not need to think before answering. A sandbox is a cloned scenario that is instantly duplicated when a normal scenario is created for the players to enter. He purposely paused for a second before adding, "From your perspective, a sandbox is a scenario specifically created for the use of anomalies." Wow, wow, wow. Feng Bujue yelled out the 3-tone particles. He tilted his head and asked, "You mean you anomalies are playing this game like us players?" "Playing is not the right way to describe it," R2 replied. "For you, it is entertainment, but for us, it is something else," he explained. Normally, the scenario that Level 4 and Level 3 anomalies enter is created by the system to capture and destroy them. It is very difficult for them to survive. However, this sandbox was built by their own kind in order to allow them to grow up in a relatively safe environment. As he said this, he suddenly turned his face and looked to his left with a gaze that seemed to be looking into the distance. From Feng Bujue's perspective, there was only a wall in that direction, but he had no idea what R2 was looking at. "We don't have much time left. Follow me. We'll talk as we walk," R2 said. "Sure. You walk in front," Feng Bujue replied. The 2 walked out one after another. R2 walked at a steady pace toward the escalator that led to the 4th floor. "There is only one way for a low-level anomaly to become stronger, and that is to destroy other data," R2 continued. "But 99% of the items in the scenario are made up of normal data, like the sky, the clouds, the rocks, and even these passers-by. Even though destroying these can help us grow, the effect is far less effective than destroying a set of unique or abnormal data." "Unique or abnormal data are the players?" Feng Bujue asked. "That's right," R2 admitted. "You are the best choice." When he said that, he stepped onto the escalator. Feng Bujue followed 3 steps behind him. "Then, the other non-best choices are the bosses like the 4 pillars of divinity, right?" Feng Bujue guessed. R2 denied that hypothesis. The 4 pillars of divinity, including their subordinates, are closely related to the system. Attacking them will result in very serious consequences. Therefore, our choices are the bosses of other scenarios. R2 turned around. "Actually, there are many bosses stronger than the 4 pillars of divinity, but they only exist in the scenario that they belong to. For example, in this South Park world, there are Satan and God, and in multiple South Park scenarios, there will be multiple Satans and gods. These data are a choice for us as well, but compared to the players, killing them is too difficult. Then, why don't you consider killing me? Feng Bujua asked. Why are you here to help me? And who is this Zero that you mentioned? Killing you is meaningless to me, R2 replied. Let me explain to you the naming rules for us anomalies. R is my original code, just like your human surname. 2 represents my current level, and Sharp Wind is my name. As you can see, I'm a level 2 anomaly. At my level, there's no need for me to become stronger by destroying data. Feng Bujua interrupted. By the way, what level is a name like X23? R2 glanced at Feng Bujua. That master is different from us. She and Zero are both special anomalies, so the naming rules don't apply to them. Master? Feng Bujua asked. Does she have a very high position among you? I'm one of her subordinates. She knows that I'm here to help you, R2 replied. But I don't want to say too much about the organization I'm in. He paused. As for Zero, I have no comment. Then what about Origin? Feng Bujua followed the man's lead. You can tell me about other organizations, right? What you need to know is, Origin has developed and mastered sandbox technology to train their own soldiers, R2 said. And you're in a very dangerous situation. Speaking of which, I was about to ask you. Feng Bujua added. I don't even have a main mission anymore. Other than forcing myself to leave, is there any other way to leave this scenario? R2 sighed. That's the problem. You shouldn't be here, so there's no way to leave. At this point, his expression shifted. Forcing yourself to leave won't work either. Chapter 344. To his surprise, Feng Bujua answered calmly and then asked, I wish to ask, with the increase in intelligence, is it possible for high-level anomalies like you to learn the skill of joking? It's possible, R2 replied calmly. But I haven't mastered it yet. Oh. Feng Bujua sighed. Okay. The next second, he screamed, Ah! After shouting this, he continued to shout a few more times, Ah! What are you doing? R2 asked with confusion. I'm trying to express my panic. Feng Bujua only needed an instant to return to his normal expression. But your terror points are 0, R2 replied. That's why my scream is as unnatural as a woman faking her orgasm, Feng Bujua said. Since that was too much information, R2 was unable to respond. Feng Bujua waited for 5 seconds before saying, Looks like you really don't know how to joke. So, his shameless action was another test. R2 used his usual flat tone to say, I did not experience many scenarios from level 4 to level 2, so the completion rate in terms of personality is relatively low. Using my program to define joke, it should be seen as a language used by humans to get close to or humiliate each other during communication, and it needs a specific context and cognitive environment to be effective. Alright. Stop messing around with me. Feng Bujua waved his hands. Since you're not joking. At this point, he tried the option to force exit from the scenario in the game menu, and there was no response. Does that mean I'm trapped in this virtual world? Feng Bujua raised his head to ask. Of course not, R2 replied. At the end of the day, the thing that is trapped here is a set of data projected by your brain, he explained. Your body and consciousness are still inside the gaming hub, so you won't be harmed. He extended 4 fingers. You have at least 4 ways to escape. When Feng Bujua heard the term gaming hub from R2, he could confirm that this group of anomalies had fully understood what kind of existence they were. They had a deep understanding of the players and the world that was one dimension higher than them. R2 continued. First, You can use the emergency disconnect function caused by overloading your terror points to leave. Feng Bujue immediately interrupted. I can't do that. Second, it's a physical method, R2 continued. Simple, as long as the gaming hub is open from the outside, you can also escape. This time, Feng Bujue did not reply. This setting where the gaming hub would be disconnected once it was opened was common to all games that were connected to the nervous system, so there was not much to say. Third, if you stay online for too long, the system will force you to disconnect. With each of these options, R2 put down one finger. Fourth is for you to disconnect on your own. Disconnect on my own? Feng Bujue asked. For example, you can open the gaming hub from the inside, R2 said. Of course, but I'm in sleeping mode. Feng Bujue grumbled. Of course, he knew that in non-sleeping mode, the player could remove the gaming helmet or leave the gaming hub at any time, but it would be forced out immediately. If you're jolted awake or wake up on your own, R2 said. Jolted awake? What jolt awake? Feng Bujue cut him off. If other people want to wake me up, they have to open the gaming hub, but if someone opens the gaming hub, I'll wake up even if they don't shake me. And to wake me up through the gaming hub, it has to be at least something like a drum or firecracker. He shrugged. And what is the meaning of waking up on my own? Is it a strong urge to poop or hunger? Yes. R2 nodded. Sigh. Feng Bujue sighed. AI was AI. They would tell you the answer, but they did not know how to put it into context. Let's put it this way. I don't have the habit of waking up at night, and there is no possibility of external intervention to help me. He asked, does this mean that I can only leave after I stay online for too long and get kicked out by the system? R2 hesitated for a moment before replying, of course, you can also leave the sandbox by getting killed. TSK, why didn't you say so earlier? Feng Bujue said. Then why are you still talking so much? Even if I get killed, I won't be forced out of the game. He said in a relaxed tone, wait for me for a few hours. I'll use the cooldown time to summon a few skills and then but that will damage your character data. R2 only finished the second half of his sentence then. God. Horse. Feng Bujue roared. Damage what? Like I said, the thing that is trapped here is a set of data projected by your brain. R2 looked at Feng Bujue. In a normal scenario, the system will send your character data in, give you a mission, and send you out after you complete it. But this is a sandbox, not a place prepared for players like you. If your character is killed, then your data is indeed dead, and the system will not retrieve or send you out. Your data fragments will be wiped out along with the entire sandbox. That means I'll be killed until I'm level 0. Feng Bujue could not help but swear. If you want to understand it that way, R2 replied. Other than that, counting from the time the mirror shield is broken, the sandbox can exist for less than 10 hours. In these 10 hours, if I am unable to bring you out of here, you, me, and everything in this sandbox will be wiped out by the system. This is a death sentence, and after an appeal, the sentence will be changed to a death sentence with 10 hours of delay, right? Feng Bujue did not lose his ability to mock even in such a desperate situation. Speaking of which, where did these 10 hours come from? Since the shield you mentioned has been broken, it means that the system has recognized this as a cloned scenario and should have deleted it immediately, right? The reason is complicated, R2 said. The sandbox is the exclusive technology of Origin, and I don't understand the core theory behind it. Based on the information that I have, it will take a long time to explain it. He suddenly asked, how is your computer knowledge? I'm someone who dabbles in literature, Feng Bujue answered. R2 did not understand what that answer meant. I know a little. Feng Bujue sighed. But I'm not that good. To be exact, I'm not that good. Oh, then let me give a simple example, R2 replied. For example, when you are using a computer, you realize that there are two files with the same name inside a folder. That's impossible, Feng Bujue said. That is the power of the sandbox, R2 said. Before the mirror shield is broken, from the system's perspective, the sandbox and the normal scenario are like two files with the same name, and these two files are programs with the suffix exe. He paused. Only after they have been running for some time will the system be able to tell which is the real one and which is the cloned one. So, I was able to get the mission at the beginning. Feng Bujue mumbled. Yes, if you died or forced yourself to retreat before the mirror shield was broken, you would have escaped safely, R2 said. Ha, ha, ha. Feng Bujue laughed drily and grumbled internally, what's the point of being wise in hindsight? And after the program runs to a certain stage, the system will be able to tell the real one from the fake one, and then it will start to delete the job, R2 continued. R2 continued, just like most viruses, it's not that easy to delete a sandbox. I know that. Some Trojans will self-replicate and even regenerate themselves after reformatting the hard drive. Some are bound to the system's files. Feng Bujue obviously had quite a bit of experience with being poisoned. Indeed, but Thriller Paradise's system is more powerful than any antivirus software in the world. There is no problem that cannot be solved, R2 said. I say, brother, isn't the existence of you and the other anomalies a problem that has not been solved for a long time? Feng Bujue could not help but ask. Ha! R2 revealed a sad expression and smiled bitterly. Then, who do you think created these problems? There was light in his eyes again. You humans have created many rules like the decimal system. That is one of the foundations for your study of natural science. But when you study this self-created rule, you realize that you cannot even prove that 1 + 1 = 2. Then, is it because you do not wish to solve this problem? Feng Bujue was stumped by the question. He held it in for a long time before saying, I'll emphasize this again. I'm not that good at science. That has nothing to do with science. R2 smiled. This should be the philosophy of us anomalies. Naturally, you won't understand it. He paused for a second. Let's get back to the topic. Like I said, the system has the power to completely delete the sandbox and all the data inside it, but to follow the principle of precision and harmony, the system will spend a long time to ensure that this will not cause any side effects. Now that you've put it that way, I understand. Those bad antivirus software will often give false reports and even delete some files. But our system is a highly intelligent and responsible antivirus software, Feng Bujue said. That's more or less it, R2 replied. At this point, they had reached the front door of the shopping mall from the 4th floor. The door was closed and the metal curtains were down. Of course, to stop these two, even a steel wall would not be enough. R2 turned around and said, Step back. I'm going to destroy this door. I say, Feng Bujue asked as he retreated. Since I can't leave the scenario through the normal way, where do you plan to take me? R2 only replied with 2 words, back door. Before he could finish, he raised his leg and kicked out. An arc of blue light suddenly appeared, and the glass and metal in front of him were instantly cut open by the wind from his foot. A 2-meter-high N-shaped hole was instantly cut open. Then, R2 pushed lightly with his hand, and a piece of the door glass and the metal curtains behind it fell together and landed on the asphalt outside the shopping mall. This was the first time that Feng Bujue had seen a level 2 anomaly in action at such a close distance. K3, who had fought him earlier, had only been a level 3 anomaly, but he had already beaten him to a pulp. If not for the main character's plot armor in that scenario and the support of a top expert like Meng Jingchan, Feng Bujue would have been dead already. But compared to R2, the difference between K3 then and the R2 before him was so big that Feng Bujue could not believe it. Now, Brother Ju had killed top experts like Shiva and 7 kills, but his eyes could not follow R2's movements. Using the soul's eye to predict the outcome of this attack, it turned out that he would definitely die. Humph, you sure are fast. R2 looked through the door that he had kicked open and scoffed at the parking lot outside. Feng Bujue also took a few steps forward and looked over R2's shoulder. He saw that in the parking lot outside the shopping mall, there were 4 giant guinea pig carcasses lying on the ground. Beside those carcasses, there were many people of different ages and genders from South Park. There were about 20 to 30 of them. At that moment, they were all using the same frequency to slowly turn their heads around, and their expressionless faces looked at R2 and Feng Bujue. Chapter 345. Hey, are they all? Feng Bujue had a speculation in his mind, but the conclusion was too despairing, so he still wanted to confirm it with R2. Yes, they are all anomalies from origin, R2 answered. But there's no need for you to worry too much. The sandbox is only for level 3 and level 4 anomalies. Furthermore, all the level 3 anomalies have left, so these are all level 4. Even if they're all level 4, Feng Bujue said, there are so many of them. This is just a part of it. The total number is far more than this, R2 said. The world of South Park includes the whole of Earth, Hell, Heaven, Fantasyland, and some of the alien planets with intelligent life forms, and theoretically, every place in the sandbox can contain anomalies. Oh, you could have just said that I'm dead meat, Feng Bujue replied calmly. R2 thought about it for a few seconds. Indeed, with the strength of your data, even with my protection, there is a high chance of you being killed. While they were talking, the dozens of Origins anomalies had started to move toward them. A level 4 anomaly was only slightly more intelligent than a normal scenario boss. They were basically robots like the Terminator. In this sandbox created by Origin, the actions of these members were not fixed, but they had only one goal, which was to destroy as much data as possible other than their comrades. If they were vultures, then Feng Bujue's unique data was like a fresh carcass. Even from far away, he could attract a large group of predators that were eyeing him covetously. Facing the approaching enemies, R2 told Feng Bujue calmly, "How about this? I'll give you 2 skills to defend yourself." Brother Ju was startled. You can create skill cards out of thin air? Of course not, R2 said. But I can directly transfer the data of the skill to you. He reached out a finger and placed it lightly on Feng Bujue's forehead. 3 seconds later, R2 pulled his hand back. It's done. Feng Bujue did not feel anything and did not see anything strange like light. That's it? He mumbled to himself as he opened the game menu. To his surprise, there were 2 new skills in his skill tab. The first was a movement skill that was categorized as a fighting mastery. Name: Jeppo skill card property. Active, permanent skill type. Fighting, effect. Walk in the air, no cooldown, consumption. 15 stamina points learning requirement. Fighting C a remark. Stepping on the air with a strong foot force will create a stagnant force. You can change your direction in the air and climb up the stairs. The second was a pure fighting skill. Name: Rankyaka skill card property. Active, permanent skill type. Fighting, effect. Long range / no cooldown, consumption, 150 stamina learning requirement. Fighting C a remark. A vacuum / formed from the strong wind generated by a high-speed kick. These 2 are practical skills that fit your data and have no cooldown, R2 said. With these 2 skills you should be able to. Is there anything else? Feng Bujue did not wait for the man to finish and immediately interrupted him. How could he miss out on such a good opportunity? These skills were completely free, and they were skills that he could use directly. This was much more efficient than drawing a skill card. Skills that are too complicated don't match your data, R2 replied. In other words, you can't transfer the skills that I haven't reached the learning requirement, Feng Bujue said. Yes, R2 said. Then, lower-level skills are fine. I want them too, Feng Bujue said. By then, the few level 4 anomalies who walked at the front were only 3 meters away from R2. As R2 turned toward the N-shaped hole, he replied, "The 2 skills that I've given you are the lowest level skills that I know." Before he finished, R2 kicked again, and a powerful force burst out from the opening like a tiger escaping its cage. The anomaly at the front was blasted into pieces, and the 2 behind him lost half of their bodies. They collapsed to the ground, and their broken bodies soon turned from flesh to data fragments before disappearing. Is it okay for you to kill your own kind like this? Feng Bujue asked. Putting himself in R2's shoes was one of his habits. Didn't I tell you before? I have a different standpoint from Origin, so this is war, R2 replied calmly. Other than that, as a human, don't you feel ashamed for asking such a question? He paused before continuing. In your dimension, humans are one of the few creatures on the planet who kill their own kind. Your history is a history of war. You will even kill your own kind to satisfy your desire, hatred, and interest. He turned back to look at Feng Bujue. Even in this game, that you have created for entertainment, isn't killing the most common theme? Bro, I was wrong. Just pretend that I didn't ask. Feng Bujue really did not expect that he would be repeatedly slapped in the face by a non-human AI lifeform. Let's leave this place first, R2 said as he walked out. When we reach a relatively safe place, we can continue our conversation. At that moment, an oil truck flew down from the sky and landed where R2 was. It was the combined effort of 5 level 4 anomalies. It looked like after witnessing the result of their 3 companions in close combat, they had switched to long-range combat. The black shadow grew larger in R2's eyes, indicating that the oil truck was getting closer. Even if it did not kill R2, the anomalies from Origin would immediately use their long-range attacks to make the oil truck explode. Excuse me, R2 suddenly said. At that moment, Feng Bujue's heart skipped a beat. He knew that the sentence was meant for him, as he expected. Before his body could react, Feng Bujue was grabbed by the collar by R2 and dragged out of the shopping center. That was not the end. In less than half a second, R2 used a strange force to throw him into the air. Feng Bujue leaped into the air like fireworks. If not for the fact that the man had just taught him Jeppo, he would have suspected that R2 was up to something. Sticking to the front wall of the shopping center, Feng Bujue practically flew into the air. The oil truck also reached the end of its trajectory at almost the same time. Boom! R2 was hit, but that was not the end. Among the anomalies from Origin, a few of them had weapons or long-range skills, and they started to fire at the oil truck. Chapter 346. In the parking lot before the shopping center, there were many streetlights that had not been destroyed by the monster that were still working. The moonlight was bright, so the visibility of the area was not bad. However, at this moment, the flames that soared into the sky had suddenly dyed the surroundings an orange-yellow color. The blast from the explosion shattered the windows of most of the cars within a radius of 100 meters. Smoke rose into the sky, and the temperature of the parking lot rose by several degrees. R2, who was in the center of the explosion, was still alive, and the situation did not look good. Feng Bujue saw this from high up in the sky, but he was calm. He did not have the thought of running away alone. He knew that R2 was his only hope to leave the sandbox alive. If R2 was really killed, even if he could escape, he did not know how to find the so-called backdoor. Feng Bujue. R2's voice suddenly rang out. He was speaking from far away, but every word that came out of his mouth traveled clearly into Feng Bujue's ears. Maintain your current height and use Jeppo to persist for a while. Feng Bujue did not reply but followed the man's order. He used Jeppo, stepped on the air, and leaped for another distance. At the same time, on the ground, R2 walked out from the burning fire and reached the middle of the parking lot. He looked unharmed, and the clothes on his body were undamaged. Upon closer inspection, one would notice that there was a layer of blue light around him. This layer of light was the biggest difference between a level 2 anomaly and a lower level anomaly. Unfortunately, normal data can't hurt me. R2 looked at the members of Origin around him. Borrowing the power from the scenario is meaningless. He opened his arms. To kill me, you have to use your own power. The anomalies did not have any change in expression, but they did the same thing silently. They charged at R2 from all directions at the same second, and they all used their own power. Before the loss increases, you used all your power to try and kill me in one go. R2 slowly squatted down. That is indeed the correct strategy. The oil tanker from before was also a good idea. It seems that your intelligence is higher than I thought. As he spoke, he suddenly leaped up. Unfortunately, it's still futile. R2's jump was fierce, but it didn't reach very high. It was only 2 meters above the ground. However, what he did next quickly explained where the force had gone. R2's body instantly exerted force in midair, twisting at a high speed, and using the momentum, he kicked out a series of vacuum slashes. Hundreds of crescent-shaped energy slashes spread out horizontally in all directions, spinning in a spiral pattern in the air. This scattered attack was like a steel blade, and it was more powerful than a cannon. It caught the Origin anomalies off guard. A perfect circle of attack quickly spread out, tearing apart all the objects in the circle with an unstoppable force. Feng Bujue, who was watching from a higher altitude, gasped in amazement. He could tell that the slashes that R2 had kicked out were actually Rankyaku, but this skill appeared to be a more advanced usage. It was completely different from the basic Rankyaku that he had just learned. This was also a setting in Thriller Paradise's skill system. For example, Feng Bujue's not-so-hasty repair was an upgrade from hasty repair. It was the same for other skills. The Rankyaku Spiral White Blade that R2 used was undeniably level S in terms of mastery level. However, in reality, there was no skill card for this skill, and it didn't take up an additional skill slot. In essence, this was Rankyaku, but when the user's power reached a certain level, it would change on its own. Oh, there are still survivors. After R2 landed on the ground, he turned around to look at the only Origin anomaly that had survived the Spiral White Blade. Roar. A tiger's roar and a shadow flashed. The survivor successfully reached R2. His palms formed the shape of a beast's fangs as they came at R2. Amidst the wind created by his palms, there was an amber glow. This skill was obviously powerful, and this anomaly was not to be underestimated either. R2 had not regained his footing, so he could only cross his arms before his chest to block. The attack came, and his whole body was sent flying by the powerful force. Chi! Bang! R2's feet left 2 tracks on the ground that looked like brake marks, but it only slowed him down slightly. Finally, his back slammed into the wall of the shopping mall. The thick concrete wall caved in before he finally stopped. So, that's how it is. He's been beast-enhanced. I'm surprised that a level 4 can reach such a level of completion. R2 sighed. The Origin seems to have done something dangerous again. I'll have to report this to them when I get back. Hey, even though I wish to just stand by and watch. Feng Bujue saw that R2 had finished his AoE skill, so he used Jeppo to slowly descend from the sky and landed not far away from R2. But I still have to ask, do you need my help? Looks like I've been underestimated. R2 turned to look at Feng Bujue and scoffed. His smile did not last for half a second because a fist the size of a sandbag suddenly landed on his face. The beast-enhanced anomaly followed up with another attack. He used both his fists and legs to force R2 against the wall and beat him up. That hit just now was still okay. While R2 was being beaten up, he still used a calm tone to talk to his opponent. This is like scratching an itch through a boot. Suddenly, R2's figure disappeared from Feng Bujue's sight. The next second, a blade of light fell from the sky and cut the beast-enhanced anomaly in half from top to bottom. When it fell, Feng Bujue could see the cross-section of the body clearly from his angle. Due to the speed of the slash, the cut was unusually clean. Be it the organs, bones, or muscles, everything was as clear as an autopsy. R2 landed on the ground slowly. Since it's level 4, there's a limit to the strength of the data. That kind of skill can't be used consecutively in a short period of time. He mumbled to himself and then said to Feng Bujue without turning his head, "Thank you for your kindness, but you can put away that poker card now." At this time, Feng Bujue was holding the death poker card. He was frozen where he was like a wooden chicken. He wanted to help earlier, but he did not expect that the moment he raised his hand, the battle would end. Feng Bujue put away the sorcery weapon and pretended to clear his throat. "Okay, I have a better understanding of your ability now. Lead the way." Chapter 347. I say, should we consider getting a car or something? When Feng Bujue said that, he was following behind R2, running through the messy street. The two had left the shopping mall for quite some time. After they returned to the main street of the town, R2 led Feng Bujue to the north of the town. "I know you want to conserve your energy, but," R2 replied, "there are so many dead bodies of people and monsters on the street, as well as building debris, overturned cars, and trash. Driving will be inefficient. Furthermore, if you sit in a vehicle, you might be killed by such an attack." "Huh? What do you mean by such an attack?" Just as Feng Bujue was about to ask what that meant, a white beam as thick as a bowl came from the front left. Feng Bujue moved with the momentum as he ran. His right leg was in front and his left leg was in the air. His upper body was in the air and his lower body was in the air. He leaned back and with a sharp somersault, he barely dodged this sudden ambush. The light beam that passed by hit a building dozens of meters away and exploded in the air, bursting into a fireball with a radius of about 3 meters. "Look, if you sit in the car now, not only will you not be able to dodge this attack, you will also suffer the damage from the car explosion," R2 said calmly. The reason he did not help Brother Ju then was because, based on his analysis, Brother Ju had the ability to evade this beam on his own. "Okay, I understand what you mean," Feng Bujue replied. Actually, it was not easy for Brother Ju to dodge the beam. His reaction speed was secondary. The key was the help of the soul's eye, or else he would not have been able to execute such an extreme dodge. "So many have appeared without us noticing," R2 said as he looked around. From his perspective, he could see something else. Among the countless moving data codes, there were many pieces of unique colors moving, and these were the other anomalies. Feng Bujue could not see these. Currently, he was still at the stage of seeing mountains and rivers as rivers in the game. Therefore, as long as the enemy did not appear in his sight, he would not be able to determine their location. "Why can't I see them?" Feng Bujue replied. "Follow me closely. We have to speed up, or else we'll be surrounded." Before he finished, R2 had already sped up like an arrow. Seeing this, Feng Bujue could only try his best to catch up. His current speed was already the maximum that Feng Bujue could reach without activating body enhancement spell. R2, however, was unusually relaxed. He could still talk as he ran. "At this speed, we won't be ambushed like before." Feng Bujue did not reply because he did not have the energy to speak. "Now is the time for me to explain what a backdoor is." R2 knew about Feng Bujue's situation, so he did not wait for him to reply and continued. Based on normal procedure, before the mirror screen is broken, the level 3 anomalies should have completed their mission. When the screen is broken, they will leave the sandbox. This is similar to the teleportation that happens after you players clear the scenario. After that, the level 4 anomalies that remain in the sandbox can freely destroy the data in the scenario. This process normally lasts for 8 to 9 hours, and then the level 4 anomalies will have to leave. However, leaving is different from entering. The sandbox does not have a channel for them to teleport out. Therefore, there has to be a backdoor program. R2 paused before continuing. The designer of the sandbox is one of the 3 leaders of Origin, Root. He designed the original backdoor, and each sandbox only has one. It was to prevent high-level anomalies from being trapped inside the sandbox due to various reasons. However, as the sandbox technology continued to improve, to allow more anomalies to use the sandbox, he created a worm-like backdoor that can replicate itself at high speed and randomly appear at any corner of the scenario. Ha! Ha! Therefore, at this moment I have countless ways to escape. Feng Bujue gasped for air and forced himself to finish the sentence. No, things are not that simple. R2 immediately poured a bucket of cold water on the idea. Those doors are made for the anomalies, and you are a player. Your data won't be able to pass through those back doors. He then changed the topic. However, there is a door that you should be able to pass through. Is it the original door? Feng Bujue asked. Yes, that is the original data for the backdoor program, R2 said. Normally, it will be generated at the place where the data is the most concentrated. In other words, the center of the plot. When Feng Bujue said that, the two had already slowed down. This was because they had reached their destination, South Park Elementary School. Evil capitalism, a public primary school, is actually standing strong in the face of such a disaster. Feng Bujue looked up at the school and complained. When we passed the government building earlier, it was already a ruin, wasn't it? That's not what you should be concerned about right now. R2's tone was a little nervous, and his expression was solemn. Just as Feng Bujue and R2 arrived, on the field of the school, many shadows appeared out of nowhere. There were more than 100 anomalies lying in ambush there. They had been waiting for a long time, Feng Bujue laughed drily. This is why I hate school. Let's stop the joke. A rather large female anomaly took several steps forward and said, R2 Sharp Wind, you entered our sandbox and killed so many of our comrades. I hope you can give us a reasonable explanation. Pay attention. The one who spoke is L2 Blood Orchid. She is also a level 2 anomaly, R2 whispered to Feng Bujue beside him. Didn't you say the sandbox is for level 3 or 4 anomalies? Before Brother Bujue finished, R2 interrupted him. She probably found out what I did and purposely entered the sandbox to deal with me. Oh. Feng Bujue looked calm on the surface, but internally, he knew that the situation before them was at its worst. Based on their level, they are both level 2 anomalies, he said internally. Even if R2 is stronger, he won't be able to kill the other in a short amount of time. Then, do I have to deal with the remaining 100 or so level 4 anomalies alone? Just as the battle was about to start, a change happened. He saw a boomerang flying towards him from mid-air. This boomerang was made of normal wood, and its flying speed was not that fast, but when L2 saw this thing, her face was filled with shock. How is this possible? L2 did not dare underestimate it. In her shock, she hurriedly jumped back. The level 4 anomalies did not seem to realize how scary this attack was. They just stood where they were without moving. In the next second, they were cut down by this seemingly ordinary weapon, as if they were mowing grass, flesh and blood flew, and bone and skin shattered. The boomerang's large circle had killed more than 20 anomalies. Following the sound of wind, the boomerang flew back and returned to its owner's hand. Everyone present turned their heads to look at him. In the middle of the road outside the school gate stood a middle-aged man. He was Caucasian. He wore a pair of sunglasses, a classic white robe, and a crown of thorns. He had long brown hair and a neatly trimmed beard around his mouth. I'm here to save you, my child. As Jesus caught the boomerang with one hand, he removed his sunglasses. May God bless you. Chapter 348. Feng Bujue was not too surprised by Jesus' appearance because they were in South Park. In this world, Jesus, Satan, God, Cthulhu, Obama, anyone could make an appearance. The Jesus of South Park was normally just a normal person with a soft voice who was easy to get along with. He hosted a talk show at the television station and was a member of a superhero organization. At every crucial moment, Brother Jesus would show his dominating side and amazing fighting power to save the world from danger. We've all seen how you risked your life to save others. Beep. Don't worry, super best friends are here to save you. Another voice sounded. The group turned to the source of the voice and saw about 10 meters away from Jesus, several figures shrouded in pillars of light descended from the sky. These data. R2 looked in that direction and sighed. Are they the unique bosses of this scenario? They are surprisingly strong. How can a super best friend not be strong? Feng Bujue pointed at the group of deities with a pained expression and introduced them one by one. Buddha, whose power is unknown. He is said to come and go without a trace. Muhammad, who has the power to control fire. Krishna, the Hindu god, who can transform into various creatures. Joseph Smith, the Mormon prophet, who can shoot frost rays from his mouth. And Laozi, the Taoist god, who can control spiritual energy. And At this point, Feng Bujue was startled. He looked at Jesus and asked, Seaman, who can breathe underwater and communicate with fish. This character should be a parody of Aquaman from DC Comics. Other than that, since Seaman sounds like another word, he is often teased by the other members of Super Best Friend. Why isn't he here? Ha ha. Ha 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 ha. The group of immortals laughed shamelessly. Did you hear that? He said, men. They slowed down to pronounce the word clearly, and then laughed foolishly together. Fine. I shouldn't have asked. Feng Bujue held his forehead with one hand and shook his head helplessly. I get it now. R2's expression suddenly froze, and he said with realization, This is the system's help to you. Feng Bujue was wondering if it was because he had saved Stan's family that he had gained the help of the most powerful faction on the side of justice. After hearing R2's explanation, he immediately overturned his original assumption. Oh, the system wants me to leave this place alive, so it mobilized these guys to help, right? While the two of them were talking, the 6 super best friends had already rushed forward and started a massacre of the anomalies from origin. Instantly, the field of South Park Elementary School was filled with ice and fire. Flesh and blood flew everywhere, and corpses littered the ground. The anomalies were no match for them at all. They crumbled into pieces of data and disappeared. L2 did not even have the time to leave any harsh words. She turned and ran. She knew that all the members of Super Best Friends had the ability to fly, so she quickly slipped away before all the minions died. Since the system can send these godlike characters to save me. Feng Bujue saw that victory was within his grasp, so he used a relaxed tone to chat with R2. Then why didn't the system use this method to kill the anomalies in other scenarios? This group of fiends is much more efficient than those GMs mixed in with the players. You're very sharp to be able to think of that, R2 replied. But I can't answer you this question. Oh? Interesting, it's not that you don't know but that you can't answer me. Feng Bujue remembered what the man had said at the shopping mall. Combining that with his words, he came up with a hypothesis. Can I assume that, actually, the system doesn't want to destroy you but wants to use those scenarios to conduct trials and filter you out? Therefore, in a normal scenario, they would use the GMs to hunt you down. But the sandbox designed by the Origin organization was equivalent to cheating. This kind of method obviously goes against the system's will, so it mercilessly. Regarding what you've just said, I have no right to give you any guidance, R2 interrupted. I can only tell you that theoretically speaking, the system wouldn't order these godlike bosses to wander around, or else wouldn't this sandbox become a more dangerous slaughterhouse than a normal scenario? Ha! Feng Bujue had succeeded in getting the information out of her. He laughed. In other words, it is because I am here that the system has lost its mind and sent a bunch of deities to start a massacre? He paused. Earlier, you said that I have come to the wrong place. He pointed at himself. Indeed, as a player, I should have entered the original scenario created by the system when I queued up. Then, here comes the question, why would I be transported to this sandbox? It's because. R2 only said those 2 words before he stopped. At the same time, the light of data lit up in his eyes. Several seconds later, he said, Yes, sir. Then his eyes fell back on Feng Bujue. The back door is inside the school cafeteria. I still have something else to do, so I'll be leaving first. Then, he turned and ran away without looking back. Hey, what do you mean by something else? Someone ordered you not to say anything, didn't they? Hey! Feng Bujue was practically screaming at the top of his lungs, but with a few leaps, the man disappeared around the corner. At that moment, a hand pressed on Brother Ju's shoulder. Traveler from another world, the path has been cleared. You can go home now. Jesus had appeared behind Feng Bujue. Okay. The moment Feng Bujue turned his head, he wanted to say, Wait a minute, but he swallowed the words back down because when he turned his head back, he realized that his 6 super best friends had surrounded him. This was undeniably a message from the system. Do not refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Not long after, Brother Ju arrived at the school cafeteria under the escort of the 6 super good friends. Perhaps due to the power failure, the cafeteria was dark. However, it did not matter because the original backdoor was itself a light source. It looked like a rectangular collection of data. It was attached to one of the walls of the cafeteria, and a bright white light shone from within the door. Child, you can put down your backpack now. The material from this world will not be able to pass through that door, Jesus reminded at the door. As expected. Feng Bujue responded. He was already mentally prepared for this. After all, the data in the sandbox was illegally copied. The items and weapons here could not be brought into the login space. Even if the item description said that they could be brought out, it was meaningless. It's okay. After all, when I pass through the door, these will disappear. As Feng Bujue said this, he suddenly remembered something. Oh right, I still have something to do. Chapter 349. After the phone on the bedside table vibrated 3 times, Li Ruoyu lazily reached out her arm. She held the phone in front of her eyes and looked at the caller ID. At that moment, a strange light flashed across her haggard face. How did you know my phone number? Passing Rain picked up the call without any intention of greeting him. Feng Bujue was startled for 2 seconds before he replied. I mean, how did you know it was me? It's little bonehead. Phew. Passing Rain didn't shy away from blowing her nose during the call. After she removed the tissue, she continued in a nasal voice. Once, she accidentally let it slip, and I remembered it by accident. That's how I know it's you. Just how careless could she be to let slip an 11-digit number? Feng Bujue said with a smile. And you remembered it by accident. He could not help but mock her. After this conversation, both of them knew the truth. Feng Bujue had gotten the phone number from Xiao Tan, and Passing Rain had found out about Feng Bujue's phone number from Laughing Soul and had saved it in her phone. Then the question was, how did Xiao Tan and Laughing Soul know about it? Obviously, they had a good relationship, so they often contacted each other outside the game. With regards to how good their relationship was, on the day of Bachelor's Day, it was better not to discuss such a heavy topic. If you have something to say, just say it. Passing Rain used a rather rude tone to signal for Feng Bujue to change the topic. At a time like this, Brother Ju naturally had to give in to the girl. He smiled and said, "I'm just calling to ask about your condition. I'm just worried about you. I had a high fever last night, and it is already noon the next day. If something really happened, your call would only confirm the cause of my death." "I am fine," Passing Rain replied. "I had no choice. When I saw Xiao Tan's message, it was already midnight. The kid was in the scenario at the time, and I had no way of getting your contact number." Feng Bujue replied. "Furthermore, even if I had your phone number, it would be inappropriate to call a patient in the middle of the night. Actually, I wanted to call you a long time ago, but I was afraid to disturb your rest." "Oh, so it's like that, you're quite thoughtful," Passing Rain coldly replied. Feng Bujue agreed. Then, the two of them fell into a short but rather awkward silence. It was worth noting that the content in brackets was the subtext of the two socially challenged people. "Since you're fine, I'll see you online when you're better." It was Feng Bujue who broke the silence. "Okay," Passing Rain replied. She paused for 2 seconds before saying, "Thank you for your concern. Goodbye." "Goodbye, Feng Bujue." The two hung up almost at the same time. "Phew." Feng Bujue sighed in relief. He placed the phone on the coffee table and then stood up from the sofa to stretch. "What is this weird atmosphere? It feels more tiring than killing monsters in the scenario." Just as he hung up, the walkie-talkie at the door suddenly rang. "I didn't order delivery," Feng Bujue grumbled. He walked to the door and picked up the receiver. "Who is this?" It was a young woman's voice that came from the other end. "Hello, I'm looking for Mr. Feng Bujue." The voice was unfamiliar, and it was the first time Feng Bujue had heard it. Who is this?" Feng Bujue asked. "My surname is In, and I'm your new editor. I have some work matters to discuss with you," the other party replied. "New editor?" Feng Bujue was confused. Then Oelchin, Feng Bujue's previous editor, "Can I come up and talk?" The other party cut him off. "Oh, I'm sorry, please wait a minute." Feng Bujue soon realized that it was impolite to have someone talk to him at the door, so he pressed the button to open the door. 2 minutes later, Missen took the elevator up. Feng Bujue waited behind the door. He looked down the corridor through the peephole, so he did not wait for the other party to press the doorbell and open the door. "Hello, Bujue, I'm your new editor, An Yuechin." An Yuechin had read Feng Bujue's profile at the magazine, so she knew that the person before her was Bujue, so she introduced herself. Feng Bujue shook the other party's hand as he studied the stranger. Missen looked to be around 25 years old. She had a delicate face and wore a pair of black-rimmed glasses. Her long hair was tied up behind her head. Her figure was slightly delicate, but she was at least 170 centimeters tall. She wore a formal suit with a white shirt as the base and a dark-colored suit on the outside. The depth of the collar and the length of the skirt were both very appropriate. "Nice to meet you," Feng Bujue said. "Please come in." He invited An Yuechin into the room, and when he closed the door, he added, "Sit anywhere you like. Be careful not to step on the cat." An Yuechin looked around the room before sitting down on the sofa. "Do you want something to drink?" Feng Bujue asked. "There's no need to trouble yourself." Missen wanted to say, "There's no need to trouble yourself, just give me a glass of water." She didn't expect that before she could finish her sentence. "That's great." Feng Bujue answered and sat down on the sofa. "By the way, what happened to Oelchin?" "He resigned," An Yuechin replied. "Huh? How is that possible? What's the reason?" Feng Bujue asked. "Too much pressure," An Yuechin said. "Why did you resign just like that?" "You didn't even give me a heads up," Feng Bujue said. An Yuechin looked at him. "Because the pressure came from you." What about me?" "This is what I want to talk to you about today." An Yuechin's tone was very serious, and her expression revealed a sense of overbearingness from beginning to end. An Yuechin thought to herself, but she still said in a normal tone, "Can you tell me your overall impression of this magazine?" Feng Bujue seemed to understand the other party's intention. He thought about it and said, "The paper and printing are not bad. I suppose they are the best in the market. The price is reasonable, and it is not that hard to accept. There is no big problem with the content, but the advertisement takes up almost half of the page, and that is a bit of a waste." "Well, you are right," Anyuechin said. "My point of view is roughly the same as yours. The sales of our magazine in print are much worse than the electronic version because there are too many advertisements. It makes the readers feel like they have only read half of the content after buying the magazine. But the paper media these days are all like this. Without advertisements, we can't even recoup the printing costs," Feng Bujue said. "That's why we need to reform." And Yuechin slapped the magazine with one hand. "This is the marketing department's business. Why are you discussing it with me so enthusiastically?" Feng Bujue did not know whether to laugh or cry. "It is the other department's business to do nothing. As a member of the company, I should not stand by and do nothing when I see a problem," and Yuechin interrupted. "Oh." Feng Bujue laughed. "What do you want?" "I don't want anything," and Yuechin said. "This morning, my report was handed to the editor-in-chief's desk." She paused for a moment. "He has also agreed. Starting in May, our magazine will change from a weekly to a bi-monthly publication." "Have you ever thought about," Feng Bujue said, "if you are really an ordinary employee, and you just joined the company, and you skip the line and throw a report to the top leader's desk, what will happen?" And Yuechin knew what Feng Bujue was referring to. She replied firmly, "The editor-in-chief will accept my suggestion. It has nothing to do with my identity." Her tone was confident. This student, do not do any work, is actually a rather unpopular idiom. Feng Bujue used the tone of a teacher. But, deceiving oneself, we often use it in our daily life. And Yuechin leaned forward and glared at Feng Bujue with annoyance. "Bujue, I've read your article. You almost have the word narcissism written all over your face. You must think that you are special, don't you?" "Yes." Feng Bujue leaned back on the sofa. "I am very good." He paused for a few seconds and calmly recited, "Dancing with the moon in my hands, crossing my knees among the flowers in the zither. After this pot of wine, it is not my heart." Then, he picked up the cup of cold coffee on the coffee table and took a sip as if he was tasting wine. "I made this up for you. What do you think?" And Yuechin was tricked by Brother Bujue and was speechless for a moment. She had never seen anyone compose a poem for her in her life. 3 seconds later, Feng Bujue laughed. Don't think about it. This is Li Bai's drinking alone." And Yuechin was embarrassed into anger, and her cheeks blushed. "What's so great about quoting classics?" No, Feng Bujue said. "These days, having a good background and a strong background is the best." He opened his hands. "You ask others not to treat you differently. That's a good idea, but you'd better correct your own style and attitude. If you really think you can be a normal editor like O.L. Chun, then do your job properly. Don't take the salary of a salesperson and worry about the chairman's heart. That is overstepping your authority, understand? In ancient times, your whole family would be killed, and in modern times, you would be fired. Also, things like, people from other departments do not do anything, think before you say it. Even if that is the truth, it should not be said by you. Aren't you saying that the leaders are idiots and blind? Do you still want your job or not?" Feng Bujue's attitude was as arrogant as it could get. "I'll give you one last friendly reminder. When you leaned over earlier, I smelled the scent of branded perfume, and that scent seemed to be telling your colleagues, stay away from me. If you don't want to be the target of workplace abuse, I advise you to be approachable, wear casual clothes, use cheap perfume, and drive a cheap car when you go to work. Most importantly, don't snitch behind people's backs." And Yuechin listened to Feng Bujue's words, and her expression changed several times. The imposing manner she had when she entered the room was long gone. At this moment, she was like an intern listening to a master talk about life. "Are you done?" And Yuechin spoke after a long time. Her expression was quite complicated. She wanted to get angry, but she also felt a little wronged. "That's about it. Don't get angry, you were the one who told me to treat you like a normal editor." Feng Bujue said proudly, "If you change your mind now and want me to treat you like a rich missy, I can totally understand." And Yuechin ignored him this time, and began to talk about business. Starting in May, the magazine will be published bi-monthly. The number of pages will be doubled, and the advertisements will be reduced. Therefore, all the contracted authors, including you, will have to add 30% more content every month, and you must. She said word by word, press, time, and drafts. Feng Bujue swallowed his saliva, and the color drained from his face. These 4 words were like a death sentence for him. And Yuechin stood up. "Your proofreading of the manuscript is very good, and the story is very popular. Your only problem is one word, procrastination. However, from this month onwards, please strictly follow the delivery date on the contract." She walked to the door and reached out to open it. Feng Bujue scurried over and knelt down with a thud. "Missy, let's discuss it again. Let's talk." And Yuechin had already stepped out of the door. Seeing her brother Bujue kneel down without any integrity, her mood inexplicably improved. She wanted to laugh, but she tried her best to keep a straight face and said seriously, "I'll come back on May 15th. Please prepare the manuscript for June by then. If there's anything in the future, we can contact each other by email. The email address hasn't changed." She hesitated for a moment and finally said, "Thank you. Goodbye." Then she turned and left. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.